We were told the NBA trade deadline would come and go, and it would be a quiet week and a half or so. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, the trade deadline will come and go. And so far, Trae Young, James Harden, Anthony Davis, Jaren Jackson Jr., Kobe White, Jared McCain, Mike Conley, Chris Paul, Colin Sexton, Nick Vucevic, and Anthony Simons. And others, by the way, have new homes. Hello, how are you? Drive time, Wednesday afternoon style, 11 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock, halfway through that work week. And one day closer to the weekend, one day closer to Super Bowl Sunday as the teams have descended upon the Bay Area. A lot of media availability. We heard from Drake May today. We heard from Sam Darnold today. We heard from Mike McDonald. We heard from Mike Vrabel. So a lot of Super Bowl conversation going on as well. And, of course, the latest on the rebuild for the Utah Jazz potentially coming to an end. And now it's time to see what sort of hand we've been dealt as this team will be front-facing and serious about competing next season for the first time in what will be 5 years. So a lot to do today. A ton to get to break down all of the trades that have happened since you and I last spoke yesterday. And, of course, we'll talk about the Jaren Jackson Jr. fit, what could come next for the Utah Jazz, and will the Jazz remain active with another transaction or two prior to tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. So Drive with Spence Checketts, that's my name. Thanks for making us a part of your day. That's Porter Larson behind the glass producing the program today. And we got a busy, busy show. College basketball makes its return tonight. The Utah women are on the road taking on UCF. Brigham Young on the road taking on Oklahoma State. And can Utah basketball, the Utah men, win a winnable game tonight against Arizona State at the Huntsman Center? Let me pause and say, if you are not busy tonight on this Wednesday evening and you're among the Ute fan faithful that is disappointed that we haven't seen consistent good basketball, go to the Huntsman Center. I'm going to go out on a limb and say tickets are available. And then head on up and cheer this team on. Success in the Big 12 is going to be tough for Alex Jensen throughout the course of this season, but tonight's a winnable game. It will be good to have a good crowd there. Utah State with a big one tonight at the Pit in New Mexico, a very tough place to play. Old school Ute WAC fans remember that. It's a 9 o'clock p.m. start. It is on FS1. So we've got a lot of college basketball tonight. The Jazz are off. They actually won. Please stop doing that. Against Indiana last night. They're going to take on an old friend, Quinn Snyder, and the Atlanta Hawks tomorrow as their road trip continues. The Utah Mammoth welcome in one of the most storied franchises in professional hockey. The Detroit Red Wings rolls into town to take on the Utah Mammoth. So a lot to do. Busy, busy Wednesday show, and it's good to have you along for the ride. Our first guest, Andy Larson, covers the Utah Jazz for the Salt Lake Tribune. He's on the road with the Jazz. We'll get his take on the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, what the Jazz gave up, what the return looks like, or any of the other pieces part of the long-term plan, and what will the rest of the season look like this year. Band McMahon, Tim McMahon, we actually have something to talk about with Tim McMahon. He's been joining the show for, we're in our 7th year. He's really been on board since the start. And the past 4 years, we bring him on. It's like, hey, do you think they'll trade Lowry? Is Keontae good? So we don't have to talk about that anymore with Tim McMahon. And then the triumphant return of Tony Jones, who covers the Philadelphia 76ers right now for The Athletic, but, of course, for a long time was the Jazz beat writer for The Athletic, covered a bunch of different things here locally. And then we'll go live to Santa Clara or the Bay Area. I believe that's where Mike Yam will join us from the NFL Network to get a preview of Super Bowl 60 between Seattle and New England. That line has pretty much stayed the same. So there's a lot of action on it, which indicates, you know what, never mind. Don't gamble on the game. You work too hard for your money. Keep it in your pocket. Keep it in your bank account. Andy Larson, Tim McMahon, Tony Jones, Mike Yam, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, producing the show today. He'll be hosting Sean's show tomorrow with James. So much for that quiet trade deadline we were promised, huh? It's been pretty chaotic.
Yeah, it's been fast and furious on the trade side. And not only that, some of the teams that you didn't necessarily expect to be buyers definitely were during the deadline. I mean, the Washington Wizards bringing in an entire new roster. Of course, the Utah Jazz, I think a lot of folks expected to maybe make some ancillary moves, clear up some space, continue to angle for the draft. Instead, they brought in one of the best pieces, I think, available during the trade deadline in Jaren Jackson Jr. So, quite a bit of surprises throughout the last couple of days. But Wouldn't be the first time that was the case on trade deadline. The reality is, Spence, and you know this well, these conversations happen in depth every year. It just kind of depends on if the guys behind the scenes are able to make them coordinate and make the salaries match and get them across the finish line. This year, it seems like they are doing that.
Also, did the New York Jets do something smart today? Frank Reich is the offensive coordinator. That feels like actually a very non-Jet move because it feels like it's a pretty smart hire.
I don't hate it. The problem is that when you have an offensive coordinator, when you need to call plays,
yeah.
you need a quarterback.
You need good players. Yeah.
You need players. You need an offensive line. You need, an offense.
Look at that. 8 straight seasons, 26th or worst in total QBR. That's on the screen right now, my New York Jets. No, it's fair. It's great to have a great play caller. It's also great to have players that are good at playing football.
It's important.
Yeah, it is. All right, so a lot to do. I do like the fact that the Jets bring in Frank Reich as the OC. The last time he was an offensive coordinator in the NFL, he won a Super Bowl with the Eagles back in the day. All right, Andy Larson will check in with Andy from the road today to talk some NBA basketball on a Wednesday afternoon. But before Andy stops by, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
Big game is almost here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Now, max discount is on the board. Prize Picks special max discount for the big game. Live in the app right now. Drake May just needs 1 passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, warning. I've been asked to put in a Prize Pick lineup for the Super Bowl and tell you what it is. So I'm going to do that because I like my clients. But if you decide to follow along, understand that this is borderline impossible, and please do not get mad at me if you lose money. So the Drake May pick is on the board, okay? So that's, of course, what I decided to do right away. And in addition to Drake May, I will let you know, as my Prize Picks app refreshes, that I'm taking Hunter Henry for an anytime touchdown. I'm taking Jackson Smith and Jigba for more than 7.5 receptions. George Alani for more than 1.5 receptions. I'm taking Kenneth Walker for more than 18.5 rushing attempts. Ramondre Stevenson, anytime touchdown. And Stephon Diggs, more than 3.5 receptions. That's a $50 play to win $2,850. The reason why the odds are so crazy is that this will not go down. But I appreciate my clients, so for entertainment purposes only. All right, we were told in the NBA that it would be a quiet trade deadline, and certainly it has been the exact opposite. Now, around here, of course, all the attention is on the newest member of the Utah Jazz, who, as I referenced on the show yesterday, is about to fly into Salt Lake to learn that he has back issues. Okay, Washington's doing the same thing. Trae Young and Anthony Davis, 2 all-star players, AD, a Hall of Famer, that have been acquired by Washington, will most likely not play at all this year, or most likely will just be playing incrementally. Washington has a top 8 protected pick in the NBA draft. Where have we heard that before? Oh, yeah, with the Utah Jazz, who also have a top 8 protected pick in the NBA draft. So a lot of people a little bit confused as to why the Jazz would do this when, as we sit here today, they are at 6 in the NBA draft. Why would you risk losing this draft capital in the middle of a draft that is thought to have 3, maybe 4 or 5 very special players and special pieces? They did not include this year's pick in this deal because they still intend to play their way, in my opinion, probably into the bottom 3 or 4, and it's probably what they should do. And we've seen them manipulate lineups all year long. I mean, they said they weren't going to, but they have been doing it all year long. Now, they ran into a team that was doing the same thing last night. Indiana sat like their top 8 players. I didn't even know who was going to play for the Pacers. And so the Jazz did their best to tank into a loss last night, but they were bested by the team that they lost to, the Indiana Pacers, who, like I said, sat most of their players. So the Pacers at this point, like the Jazz, are going to tank the rest of the way to see what sort of odds they can get as it pertains to the upcoming draft lottery. And the problem is this year, and look, I know the NBA has been pretty vocal about trying to find a solution to fine teams, penalize teams for being unserious about competing and sitting players, when they're not hurt. Well, it's happening every night, and it's not just the Jazz. The narrative that the Jazz are like the model for tanking, it's entirely unfair because most teams are doing this. And now we've seen some other teams that are about to join the fray. So I would say the good news about this trade deadline, where Washington and Utah and some of the, cellar dwellers over the past 4 years, well, for Washington, cellar dwellers for, 20 years. Next year, the way I'm kind of seeing this thing lay out a little bit, a good portion of the league will believe they have a chance to not just make the play-in, but make the playoffs and maybe be a top like 4 or 5 seed. So next year, I don't think we're going to run into the issue that if you're an NBA fan, you're about to see the rest of the way. Sacramento is unserious. I mean, as unserious as any organization there is out there. That owner is a lunatic. So I don't know that they're trying to tank. They just suck, and they have a really weird team. The Pelicans, I don't know what they're going to do with Zion, but they're going to be unserious. The Jazz will be unserious. Now the Mavericks will continue to be unserious, as will the Grizzlies. The Blazers are in this really weird space of ambiguity. They've lost 6 straight games. I think they may have swung and missed on Scoot Henderson. Do you remember, by the way, during the Victor Wembanyama draft, when some of the NBA media members who really like to zig when everyone else is zagging, is like, hey, I kind of like Scoot.
I love Scoot.
And you're like, wait, what? No, I'm talking about when we were talking about Wembanyama, right. And there were some people like, well, wait a second. I don't know about this Wembanyama guy, because have you seen what Scoot's doing in the G League? You're like, shut up. Don't say that out loud.
Yeah, I was admittedly pretty high on Scoot Henderson. I think he's got a lot of the tools. But yeah, when you saw Victor Wembanyama in comparison, come on.
Hasn't worked out. So the Blazers, I think at some point, will probably have to do the calculation that they're going to join the Grizzlies, the Mavericks, the Jazz, the Pelicans, and the Kings as teams that will be more or less unwatchable the rest of the way. And out east, you have the Pacers. You have the aforementioned Wizards that, even though they've made moves, as I referenced, they have to hold on to their assets, so they are going to join the tanking party. You have the Brooklyn Nets. I think you have the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm going to include the Chicago Bulls in this mix because I don't know what the hell they're doing. Zero clue about the plan for the Bulls. What that is, 10 teams in pro basketball, a literal third of the league, the rest of the way, is going to be manipulating lineups in the name of draft capital to hope that they luck into one of the top 3 or 4 picks in the draft to take AJ, to take Darren, to take Cam Boozer, or any of these other players that a lot of these scouts believe worth going all in for. And if you're Washington and if you're Utah, what you've done over the past 24 hours has really set you up for something pretty intriguing next year, especially if on lottery night, the ping pong balls finally bounce your way. Because the Washington Wizards go get Trae Young. Now they go get Anthony Davis. And they've already got a pretty decent young core with Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, and Trey Johnson. So you add AD to that, you add Trey to that. If you can add a Darren Peterson, an AJ DeBonsa, or a Cameron Boozer to that mix, then you go all in next year to see how good you can be. And they have a chance to be pretty fun next year. And what the Utah Jazz have just done, and I believe they're bringing back Walker Kessler. We got a lot of guests on the show to talk about that today. You bring back a healthy Walker Kessler. You bring Jaren Jackson Jr. in to be your 4, Lauri Markkanen to be your 3, Ace Bailey to be your 2, probably Keontae at this point to fill in that last spot. I don't think he's a point guard. That's just me. But in this day and age of positionless basketball, you get a bunch of skilled players on the floor, and then you bring the ball up, let's initiate the offense and go in that direction. If the Jazz are able to add a Darren Peterson, a AJ DeBonsa, a Cameron Boozer to that mix, we're cooking with gas next year, okay? So this has been a fascinating trade deadline. I think a lot of people believed, at least this is what we were hearing with the reporting, it was going to be somewhat quiet, and it's been the exact opposite. Just real quick before we break, the latest deals, Ochai Agbaji, a lot of former Jazz players in the mix here. Ochai Agbaji is going to Brooklyn in addition to a second-round pick. The Clippers will get the draft rights to a player named Vanya Marinkovic. Does he know zero? I don't know anything about him. And then the Raptors are going to get Chris Paul. This is a salary-shedding deal, I think, for the Raptors because they're going to, I think, allow Chris Paul to see if there's any interest from contending teams. I referenced that I don't know what the Chicago Bulls are doing. They get former Jazzman Colin Sexton, Osame Dieng, and then 3 second-round picks. Mike Conley Jr., former Jazzman, is going to Charlotte along with Kobe White. That deal is for the Hornets to grab Kobe White, who's a really good player, and the Hornets have been awesome as of late. The rumors are they're going to allow Mike Conley to go back to Minnesota. So quite a journey for Mike Conley this year. And Oklahoma City will get Mason Plumlee, and then they have waived him. Speaking of Oklahoma City, this is a scenario where we're going to break down all these other teams. They trade for Jared McCain today. Jared McCain is 21 years old, and prior to tearing his meniscus, he was a front runner for Rookie of the Year. And, of course, Oklahoma City has a treasure trove of assets to continue to build. I don't know. I mean, hell, if they get the number 2 pick, is A.J. DeBonsa playing in the G League? Philly gets a second-round pick they get 3 second-round picks, actually, from OKC. Then they're going to get Houston's first-round pick this year in exchange for McCain. Of course, VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, their backcourt of the future. But I've when you look at what Oklahoma City has at this point, not just right now, but moving forward, the rest of the league is going to be looking up to them for quite some time. Now, Shea's hurt. He's got a little bit of an ab issue. He's going to be out through the All-Star break. I wonder if that's just Shea not wanting to play in the All-Star game like a lot of people don't. But Oklahoma City, Jared McCain is 21. Nikola Topic is 20. Thomas Sorber is 20. Kaysen Wallace is 22. Chet is 23. A.J. Mitchell is 23. Jalen Williams is 23. The other Jalen Williams, who's not very good, is 24. Lou Dort, 26. Isaiah Joe, 26. Aaron Wiggins, 27. Shea is 27. Hartenstein is 27. And then Caruso and Kendrick Williams are 31. They're going to be awesome for 6 years. And then with the 12 picks they have left, they can just keep adding to this group. Sam Presti, a masterclass in roster construction for both the interim and the future. So NBA trade deadline, we'll get to some Super Bowl 60 chatter. Mike Yam is going to join us from the NFL Network, but we'll catch our first break of this Wednesday show and bring in our friend Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. Coming up on the other side of a Wednesday drive right here on ESPN 700. Busy show. We've got Tim McMahon. We have Tony Jones. We have Mike Yam live from the Super Bowl. Live in Atlanta, question mark, is where we find our first guest. Andy Larson, how are you, young man?
I'm well, and yes, I am in Atlanta.
Are you meeting up for, I think Quinn is like a latte guy. Are you meeting up for a latte with Quinn Snyder?
I will see Quinn tomorrow before the game, but the shadow GM of the Hawks is pretty busy on deadline day.
Fair enough. Do you still feel like Quinn would like to punch you in the face?
No, I don't think so. No,
okay.
I will see him tomorrow and not be that worried about potentially being punched. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think whenever you cover a team with, I think one of the reasons that you have me on the show and that you respect what I do is that sometimes I will not pull punches, right? I will cover the team accurately and even criticize them when it was needed. And certainly at the end of Quinn's tenure, it was sometimes needed. And, I think Quinn recognizes that to some degree and is not certainly not still heard about it now.
No, I'm mostly being facetious and joking around. Not entirely, because I can remember sitting in some pressers, and again, respect to you. At least somebody around here has the cojones to ask a question. Is there one specific Quinn interaction that comes to mind for you? I'm going to tell you mine. I'll never forget this. I was sitting in a presser, and the Jazz were in this stretch where they just kept turning the ball over and over and over. And you could tell Quinn he wanted to pull his hair out. And you said something along the lines of like another game with this many turnovers. Like, how do you switch that around? Like, or something like, how do you limit the turnovers? And he looks at you and he says, don't throw it to the other team or something like that. And he was just like, his face was red. I'm like, he wants to kill Andy right now. Is there anyone that comes to mind for you?
Well, and turnovers was a specific point for him because he believed that a certain number of turnovers and even a large number of turnovers was acceptable so long as, the offense was working generally, and usually it was for the Jazz. Dennis Lindsey had the opposite idea about turnovers and thought that was a big problem. And so I think when he was mad there, he was also mad at other parts of the organization. So there was like some subtext to every turnover question, which meant you got phone calls from the powers that be when you would ask about turnovers, which is like, asking about rebounds or asking about, of course we're talking about turnovers. It's a basketball thing, right? Like, so anyway. But yeah, I mean, look, the Quinn one that comes to me is at the end of the year, of his final year, probably, I guess, 2 months left, when he had the 20-minute press conference about how well Donovan and Rudy were playing together, right?
Yeah.
That the number of passes between Donovan and Rudy was not indicative of how well they were playing together. And indeed, after 20 minutes of this, he said sometimes they have lunch together sometimes, that moment, I have not had another coach that tried to make his point by going on monologues before, but I guess that's what you get when you get a JD and a law degree and an MBA and all of Quinn's education in a head coaching role.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I will just say I feel like I was privy to what was actually happening during that time. So knowing the truth and then watching this poor guy try to tread water. I mean, they were trying so hard to, forward this narrative that things were fine behind the scenes when they just very much were not. And of course, we know that in retrospect. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I guess why you have to do that. But, reporters were trying to find out the truth or ask how people are reacting to the truth. And that was not, that was whatever Quinn was trying to do there. I don't know that was particularly helpful.
For sure. All right, moving on, because there are more interesting things to talk about the Jazz now, and thank goodness. So not a lot of people, well, I'll just say maybe nobody was expecting this sort of transaction. And, it's interesting. Ja Morant deciding to be unserious about being a pro, the collateral damage from just his breakdown. Desmond Bane is in Orlando. We'll see if they can move Ja, but I didn't think Jaren Jackson Jr. was even available but he's now the newest member of the Utah Jazz. We'll get into the particulars of the trade in a moment, but in a vacuum, what does Jaren Jackson Jr. mean to the Utah Jazz?
Yeah, we've been talking for nearly 3 years now about the Jazz not having it defensively, right? Like being literally last in the league. And through this point, the Jazz have the worst defensive rating in NBA history. So the defense needed to improve. And as you kind of thought about how this team would get out of the hole that they're in the Western Conference, I think the Jazz had really good offensive answers and not great defensive answers. And so they went out and got Jaren Jackson Jr., who is a Defensive Player of the Year, who, is maybe not playing at that level right now, but at one point was the best help rim protector, help defender in the NBA. And, we knew that I think there was some league idea that Jaren Jackson Jr. could be available under the right circumstances. But yeah, I think it was a surprise if Jazz made their move now because everyone was kind of expecting it in the offseason after the tank ended and you kind of figure out who they're going to take in the NBA draft. So, yeah, this solves their biggest problem. And all of a sudden, this makes it possible for them to be a good team as soon as next season, which is monumentally exciting, I'm sure, for Jazz fans because, what they've gone through the last 4 years is significant and was not a competitive team. And this one, you can put together a 5-man lineup and, heck, even an 8-man rotation that looks pretty darn good on paper.
So a couple things here about what this is going to look like immediately. The way I've framed it is Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to fly to Salt Lake and learn that he has a back issue. Right? Like they've got that top 8 protected pick. Washington also has a top 8 protected pick. They just traded for Anthony Davis. They also traded for Trae Young. I would be stunned if either of those two players even play a game. And the Jazz at this point are, I think, 6th in the standings. And that's like a 95% chance to hold on to the pick, I believe. So what's the rest of this season going to look like, Andy, for the Utah Jazz?
A lot of thinking. I mean, yeah, you just have to tank this out. The Jazz absolutely want to keep their top 8 pick, protected pick. It is imperative that they do so. So you're going to see Markkanen sit. You're going to see Jaren Jackson Jr. sit. You're going to see Keontae George sit. You're going to see Yusuf Nurkic, if he's on this roster tomorrow, sit. I mean, it's going to require, I think, a fine level worthy tanking for the next couple of months. By the way, did you see the Shams tweet just now?
Let's see. Let me pull up Twitter. I don't love to just always be on Twitter, but that's part of my job. Hold on a second.
This is where we are on deadline day.
What do we got?
The Cleveland Cavaliers have agreed to trade Lonzo Ball and 2 second-round picks to the Utah Jazz, sources tell ESPN.
Okay.
Ball's agent Rich Paul and the Jazz are expected to discuss his future soon.
Okay, so some breaking news via Andy Larson, via Shams Charania, the Utah Jazz. Why isn't – I hate Twitter. I hate Twitter. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Repeat that, Andy, while I'm looking for the Shams tweet.
So you've got Lonzo Ball and 2 second-round picks to the Utah Jazz. And it sounds like, the Jazz and Rich Paul are expected to discuss his future soon, what Shams says. And so that means probably looking for a buyout possibility there. And then we have another one that involves the Jazz trading out Jock Landale to the Hawks, which is convenient given they're in Atlanta. For cash considerations, so we have 2 trades that have broken in the last 2 minutes about the Jazz.
Look at this. Andy Larson, breaking news on this program. The Cavs have traded Lonzo Ball to the Jazz, and the Jazz have traded Jock Landale to the Hawks. Now, if this was LeVar Ball or LaMelo Ball or I forget what the rapper's name is, maybe it would be different. Lonzo, once upon a time, was like, man, this kid, he's got something. A lot of injury issues.
Can I call you back just because the Jazz are calling me and I've got to confirm these trades?
Go do it. Go do it. Andy Larson is live in Atlanta where the Utah Jazz will play the Atlanta Hawks, and we have some breaking news over the course of the past 30 seconds. Lonzo Ball, 2 second-round picks to the Utah Jazz. Lonzo Ball, 2 second-round picks to the Jazz, and then Jock Landale is traded to the Hawks where the Jazz are right now. They're in Atlanta. By the way, I believe the Jazz earlier today decided to fly a bunch of their two-way players to Atlanta. What that indicates is that, of course, something was on the horizon. I have not seen the availability reports just yet for the game tomorrow between the Jazz and the Hawks. But if you're going to put your two-way players on a plane, you have to address at least 8 players to abide by league rules in order to play an NBA game. So the news that the Jazz were ultimately flying a bunch of two-way guys to Atlanta for the game tomorrow indicated that certainly moves are on the way. But Jock Landale, this can't be it. I tweeted this out after the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade. I said it feels like more's on the way. So Jock Landale goes from the Jazz to the Hawks. We talked about this yesterday. I didn't feel like Jock Landale was part of the future plans. And then Lonzo Ball, 2 second-round picks to the Jazz. And according to Shams, Rich Paul, who is Lonzo Ball's agent, and the Jazz are expected to talk about his future. Now, Lonzo's second year in New Orleans, he was about 15 points, 6 assists, 5 boards, shot 38% from 3. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. You know, once upon a time, Lonzo Ball was thought to be the best ball, and now that clearly is his brother. He raps on the side, so there's that. Jazz fans, if you want to get a little, he's a rap enthusiast from what I'm reading here. So, Porter, could we get maybe a second iteration of Too Big Yo, the original Gordon Hayward rap, this time from Lonzo Ball?
I will say, I'm not a aficionado on hip hop as much. Lonzo Ball is better than Gordon Hayward at that part.
At rapping?
Yeah.
You're better than Gordon Hayward at rapping. Let's be clear about that. Oh, it's LiAngelo. LiAngelo is the third Ball brother that I forgot, who did play some basketball, but now apparently is like a streaming rapper that makes a lot of money. Didn't he rap at the All-Star game last year or something?
In some form, yeah.
Lonzo was thought to be the best Ball brother. It's clearly LaMelo. What's the dad's name who was everywhere for a while? LeVar, right?
LeVar, yeah.
Where the hell has he been?
He's had some health issues.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Haven't kept up on the LeVar Ball storyline, but when his kids were kind of coming up through AAU, that dude was, and he was so obnoxious. But I'll tell you what, 2 of the 3 made the NBA, and one of them's like an all-NBA type level performer. They've all made millions of dollars, so maybe we owe LeVar Ball, or whatever the hell his name is. LeVar, right?
LeVar.
Maybe we owe him an apology.
Yeah, he, I mean, listen, he was confident, and his kids are good athletes. But yeah, he's had a rough year or so. I think he's without feet now.
What?
Yeah.
He's without feet?
At least a foot.
Okay.
Not a laughing matter. But
No, it's not funny if our guy, like, he had to have a foot taken off.
Yeah.
Well, then thoughts and prayers with LeVar Ball. Did you ever see the Kenan Thompson SNL skit?
Yes.
That was so good. Anyway, so what do you think about Lonzo Ball? This is, look, I don't know, man, because again, he had a couple of really high-level years. He had 1 year at UCLA. He was the second, my goodness, he was the second overall pick in 2017. He was drafted by the Lakers. I forgot he went number 2 overall. Brandon Ingram. He played with Brandon Ingram, D'Angelo Russell. He was part of a weird Laker team, and then was traded. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. But he had a couple of decent years with the Pelicans, and then one decent year with Chicago, but health issues, injury issues. Let's get Andy Larson back on. Andy, you missed it. We were talking about Lonzo's ability to rap on the side, so, there's that. But Andy Larson's back with us. Is there any chance Lonzo Ball, who was just acquired by the Utah Jazz, is around longer than, a few days, a few weeks?
No. I mean, Chris Haynes currently reporting Lonzo Ball will be waived by the Jazz, will be a free agent point guard in demand. That also makes sense with what Sham said. That's not what, my conversation with the Jazz just now was about kind of the mechanics of the deal with Lonzo Ball coming in and Jock Landale being out, kind of part of the same trade negotiation, to be, if in one way to put it, but that in reality, these are 2 separate trades kind of required by the nuances of the CBA. So essentially the Jazz looks like take Lonzo Ball into the trade exception they got for John Collins is how I think it's going to be working, and then trading Jock Landale out to the Hawks, which makes sense because he has actually started a lot of games for the Grizzlies this year, but is on a one-year contract that, I think the Jazz have other plans at the center position next year, and obviously don't want a useful center this year while they're trying to tank.
If you could have dinner with Lonzo, LiAngelo, or LaMelo, who would you choose and why?
LaMelo's probably the best story to tell your grandkids, right? Because I think Lonzo and LiAngelo might be forgotten by them.
Yeah, but LiAngelo has this, this rap career that apparently has exploded, and I know you're a big hip hop guy, so you could talk about that.
My understanding is that it exists. Has it exploded?
I don't know.
Look, I'm not with the LiAngelo Ball rap.
I was, after you had to hop off, which I totally respect because you have to do your job. We were just filibustering, so I was kind of remembering that era when LeVar Ball was everywhere. Now Porter tells me that he doesn't have one foot, so that's pretty sad. Moving on. All right, what's next, Andy? I tweeted out after the Jaren Jackson deal that it feels to me like there's more on the horizon, only because the roster certainly is far from complete. I mean, I absolutely love what they did, and I'm thrilled that we actually have a trade that indicates they're going to be serious moving forward. But my get, and maybe they wait to see what sort of hand they've been dealt in the draft. Jock Landale goes to Atlanta. They just traded for Lonzo Ball. He's not going to be part of the future. What do you think is next for the Jazz?
Yeah, I think, kind of veteran trades are obviously still on the table. I think a Kevin Love landing spot may make sense. Would be interested to see if somebody wants John Conchar. Vince Williams makes a lot of sense, actually, as a perimeter defender for this Jazz team that they don't currently have. So I, would not be shocked if they kept him, but we'll see. Kind of everyone's getting to Salt Lake City for their physicals. And then it sounds like most likely they join the Jazz on this road trip this weekend. But yeah, kind of trade-wise, look, they're going to be out of cap space in the summer now. But the franchise plan is to be good next year. They've traded away their own first-round pick next year. And so I think you're looking at making moves that fit that timeline. But, I'm also at the point where we've got, 22 hours left in this trade deadline window. And I'm expecting the unexpected because I've seen a lot of that so far. I was told and understood that this would be a quiet trade deadline for the Jazz a couple of weeks ago, and certainly has proven to be anything but, because this was just the right opportunity for them. So I don't want to give too many prognostications, I guess, for the remaining 22 hours, just because we shall see.
Quick update. LiAngelo currently goes by his stage name Jello, and he is focusing on his rap career after his first single called Tweaker exploded online, just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, okay, moving on from that. So let's just focus on what we have in front of us. And, right now, you tell me, because, there's a lot here. I don't love look, Keontae, his decision-making has been better. He's evolved. He's grown. We know that. But are we looking at Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Walker Kessler as the starting five opening night next year?
I think so. That's kind of the planned front court part of it, at least. And obviously it depends what kind of caliber of pick you get in the next year's draft. If you get a Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonsa or Cam Boozer, it's hard not to start those guys just because they are so good right away. But I think that is kind of what makes the most sense. And that's a really hefty jumbo lineup. I think, that's if you can play everyone positionally up a spot, especially at the 2 and 3 spots where you're playing Ace Bailey at shooting guard and Lauri at the 3, I think that is the best lineup. That gets all the talent out on the floor together at the same time. And I think it's some talent that makes some sense with one another, right? You want Walker to play with Jaren Jackson Jr. because he needs a center who can rebound and be kind of a stalwart down there while he does the movement defensive stuff. I think you need some shooting, obviously, around Walker Kessler. You need the pick-and-roll playmaking of Keontae George to make this all work. You need the screening of Walker Kessler to free up Lauri and Ace and even Jaren Jackson from time to time on a split-action kind of screen stuff. So, yeah, to me, I think that is the most likely outcome. And I think the Jazz will kick the tires on some Walker Kessler trades and kind of see what the other possibilities are. But I think that's the probably most likely version of what happens come October next year.
LiAngelo's album is called, League of My Own. Tweaker peaked at 7 in the U.S. R&B chart. Can You Please, featuring Glorilla, did not chart. Neither did Law, In Order, or Boot It Up, FYI.
So he's a one-hit wonder to this point, but young, developing.
Correct.
Prospect.
Yeah. Best years ahead. All right. So when it comes to holding on to this draft pick this year, as you already outlined, indicates they're going to tank, and they joined 9 other teams now in Tankathon 2025-26. I know the league has said they're going to try to do something about that. I don't know what they can do. Now Memphis has joined. Dallas has joined. Washington will continue, even though they've made some acquisitions. So when it comes...
I think the Wizards don't tank, right? Like the Wizards... I mean, maybe they tanked for the last couple months, but they've got Anthony Davis and Trae Young.
No, I'm talking about this year because they have a top 8 protected pick. They have a top 8 protected pick like the Jazz do. So I don't think we're going to see AD or Trae. I don't think we're going to see Jaren Jackson Jr. Correct. I'm talking about the rest of the way this season. So the Jazz have to have an eye on one of these prospects to add to this group. Any thoughts? It feels like most people think Darren is the play. And Tom Haberstroh on the show this week said he thinks Cam Boozer is the best player in the class. I don't think Cam would fit into what the Jazz have done. Best case scenario, draft night for the Jazz, you think looks like what?
Yeah, it's either Darren Peterson or AJ or maybe it's Cam. Maybe you take whoever you think is the best player available. I like what the Jazz have put together, and I think it's well thought out. But look, it's not. I don't think it's really a championship core right now, and in order to be a championship core, it still needs probably, in my mind, a top 10 player. And so you're drafting the guy you think is most likely to be that. I think Darren Peterson is the cleanest fit. But honestly, I don't hate the Cam Boozer idea. Who's just because I can see him kind of being a better version of Yusuf Nurkic, kind of operating out of the top of the elbow and being able to score at a high level. Plus, his passing opens up a lot, right? Like if you have poor man's or shorter Jokic, creating for one of the best big man shooters ever in Lauri Markkanen, and you've got Jaren Jackson Jr. there to cover up the defensive liabilities to some extent. You've got Boozer there to rebound. I think that makes some sense. Darren Peterson makes a ton of sense because he's the best guard prospect in a long, long time. He kind of clarifies a lot of the ball handling deficits you have beyond Keontae George. And then, AJ DeBonsa, I don't think you can turn down a guy who I think projects to be a 25-point a game, maybe a 30-point per game scorer in the NBA. So, you just go out and get the top guy. Look, and then if you get picks 4 through 8 where it's a little bit less clear, I think Caleb Martin's kind of pushed himself into a spot where he's clearly the 4th overall guy, and I think you probably, again, have to draft him for best player available reasons. But, yeah, then maybe you get into a Kingston Fleming situation where, you prioritize him because he has, the ball and hand skills that this roster needs. But I think, one of the cool things about this lineup is that it does provide you with a floor that you are really pretty good, and then you can kind of build on it in a number of different ways because only one guy on this team needs the ball to be really effective, and that's Keontae George at this point.
LiAngelo has 2 children with TV personality Nikki Medeiros, Lavello and Lanaya. But last February, Nikki accused LiAngelo of ghosting and cheating on her, so they broke up. A few weeks later, he married social media personality Rashida Nicole. They had a child, but he's now filed for divorce. So 3 children, 2 baby mamas. That's the personal side for LiAngelo.
Thank you. You're enjoying this bit a lot, I can tell.
Okay, moving on. The fit of Jaren Jackson Jr. next to Walker Kessler. So it's interesting, Andy, you know this, but I would guess most fringe NBA fans would believe Jaren Jackson Jr., 6'10", defensive player of the year, crashes the glass. He doesn't. He averages 5 or 6 boards a game. It's not his strength. Actually, playing next to Walker, to me, feels like it makes sense. What's the future of Walker Kessler and the Utah Jazz, and what do you think of the fit of those two playing next to each other?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I saw Walker in the locker room yesterday, and he didn't want to talk on the record, but I think it makes a lot of sense for the Jazz to put a real center next to Jaren Jackson Jr. I mean, if you look at kind of his on-off splits since he's been with the Grizzlies, and especially for the last 5 years, they are a lot better when he plays the power forward position rather than the center position. And, they place him next to Steven Adams and a whole bunch of different centers down there. I mean, obviously Zach Edey, Jock Landale at times this year. And that's kind of the version of Jaren Jackson Jr. that makes the most sense. So having Walker as a fit down there from a rebounding point of view, and remember, I think he was the second best offensive rebounder in the league last year. Jaren's really bad at offensive rebounds. That covers that hole. And then, you have Walker getting the defensive rebounds as well, I think, most of the time. And, yeah, Jaren gets about 5 a game. And you're kind of more okay with that in a lineup that has, Larry Markkinen there to rebound as well, Ace Bailey there to rebound as well. Keontae's tried more on the glass this year. I don't think rebounding is likely to be as big of a problem for the Jazz as it was for the Grizzlies, which is a great sign. I think really the questions for me in terms of fit are less on court and more just about the money, right? If you're paying Jaren Jackson Jr. $50 million a year, Lowry $50 million a year, let's say Walker $30 million a year, how much can you pay Keontae George on his next contract? Tony Jones thinks it's going to be a max. I don't think so in this year, in the current climate towards scoring guards, but we'll see. I mean, you run out of money extremely quickly to put young, depth around those guys. And so that's where, I think you have some questions. But on court, I think Walker is just about as good of a theoretical fit as you can ask for.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think there's any chance, though, based off of the finances, because Walker, it's for our listeners, it's kind of like what they did with Hayward. They told Gordon, go bet on yourself. He did. He got a max offer sheet from Charlotte. They matched it. Gordon stayed until, he didn't. Is there a number Walker could get on the open market where the Jazz would be like, you know what, we just can't? Is that a possibility?
I like a full max, I think maybe, or somewhere really, really close to a full max. I mean, even at 30 to 35, I think you have to match, and then if you think it doesn't work out long term, deal with the consequences in the long term. You've seen, heck, Jaren Jackson Jr. is an example in his own right. A guy who is that talented, even if he's got a big contract, you can trade some value for. So. The other thing on this is that the Wizards look like the most likely team to sign him, and they just traded for Anthony Davis. And so where that big money is going to be coming from in the 2026 free agent market is, I think, an open question. I think there are teams interested, but are there teams interested enough to give that max offer sheet and tie up that money for the 3 days while the Jazz have that window to match and then ultimately not go through it? I don't know that there are. And I think that's one reason why we've seen kind of deflated restricted free agent values in recent years. And I kind of expect Walker to go that same way, even though it does frustrate his representation.
Injury report for the Utah Jazz against the Atlanta Hawks tomorrow. Keontae George out. Jaren Jackson Jr. out. Of course, Walker Kessler out. John Conchar out. Jock Landale is no longer with the Jazz. Vince Williams Jr., of course, trade pending. Questionable Kevin Love. I heard that the Jazz flew out a bunch of two-way guys to Atlanta. Andy, do you have that intel as well?
Yeah, I mean, and the injury report says that too, by the way. I've also heard that. But, if the two-way guys were not with the team, they would be on this injury report. But since they're not, all three of them are not on the injury report, that means all three of them are with the Jazz. And I think that makes sense because, we could see them get significant amount of playing time, especially, you look at Isaiah Collier played 48 minutes yesterday. I don't think that the Jazz's health and performance staff would be super happy if he played 48 minutes again the next game. So could we see, I know Elijah Harkless is still recovering from his injury. I think it's a hamstring, but John Tonje and Oscar Shibwe, I think, yeah, sure.
All right, so let's move over now to, let's see, where did I want to go? Oh, yeah. So Shams has the update, essentially a 3-team trade that allows the Jazz to pick up 2 second-rounders, the Hawks to land a productive center in Jock Landale, and the Cavaliers to shed significant salary and tax savings while bringing in James Harden, Keon Ellis, and Dennis Schroeder to fortify the roster this week. There are a lot of people that believe the Jazz gave up too much for Jaren Jackson Jr. I don't. I mean, in order to get a player at the age of 26 who's won Defensive Player of the Year and has been a 2-time All-Star, and with the bevy of assets you have, I've been yelling for 3 years, go do something with those assets. Do you think the Jazz gave up too much to get Jaren Jackson Jr.?
So long as Jaren is the player that he has been for most of his career rather than this year's player, I think it's a very good deal for the Jazz.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll say so long as they are able to tank out for the rest of the year, and so long as they're able to be relatively decent, so you're not giving up like a top 5 pick in next year's draft, right? Like that would be a big asset to give up. But all of those things I think are expected, right? Like I think Jaren is likely to rebound once he gets on a team that's kind of set up to fit the way he plays, like I think this Jazz roster is. And, it's not like he's 32 and fallen off a cliff. He's 26. And I think it's reasonable to expect some better play. I think he's going to be rejuvenated by being on the Jazz. I think this is a really exciting opportunity for him. So that makes sense to me. And then, you're talking about 2 picks in the 2027 draft, which is not expected to be a very strong one. GMs have been sounding the alarm bell about that for over a year now. And then, the one that could bite you, I guess, is the 2031 Phoenix Suns pick, and we just don't know how that is. I mean, remember the Jazz traded 3 bad picks for that one, kind of up in the air pick, but it's those picks would all be in the 20s. I think it's a reasonable deal. There are ways that this goes badly for sure. I mean, I don't want to. There is significant risk in this deal, but I think that it's a risk worth taking because Jaren Jackson Jr. is such a good fit. Again, what they needed defensively is, in my mind, exactly what Jaren Jackson Jr. provides, and so you get the chance to try it out while not handicapping yourself of all of your assets, right? You still have Jazz picks in the future. You still have 2 picks in 2029. You still have some of your young players, and I think some of the most promising young players. This is good, and I think it's the risk worth taking. So, did the Grizzlies do pretty well for themselves? I think so, but it just is because of where they are as a franchise, and the Jazz are at that point where I think it's fair for them to try something, and that's obviously what this is. So. No, I don't think they gave up too much.
I agree with you. Let me throw something at you. So your point about the 2027 draft is well taken. I think that's one of the reasons why Austin decided to give both of these first rounders in 2027, because the Lakers pick at one point we were kind of like, all right, maybe LeBron's gone by then, but then of course the Luka trade continues to just be the most horrific decision in the history of mankind, quite frankly. I mean, they got 29 games out of Anthony Davis, so it's just ridiculous. But the most favorable pick in 2027 is Utah, it's Minnesota, and Cleveland. So the most favorable of that pick will go to Memphis. Now, let me throw something at you to see if there's anything here, if you're reading it the same way. The Cleveland Cavaliers just traded Darius Garland to the Clippers for James Harden. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, Harden is going to unlock their bigs in a way, and they're back in the mix. I'm kind of reading this as, and this is coming from maybe our PTSD with Donovan, I'm kind of reading this as the Cavs doing their calculation and understanding that Donovan is going to leave Cleveland the way he left Salt Lake. What that kid is looking for, who knows? So they get out from under Garland's deal. Harden is in the last year of his deal. And they move on from Mitchell next year, and they kind of start over. Is that exactly what's going to happen? I don't know. But if that is the case, that Cleveland pick in 2027 could be something. Am I up in the night, or tell me what you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff has to go wrong, right? So, yes, I think step one will be James Harden and Donovan Mitchell doesn't work out, which is plausible to imagine, though I think both of those players are really good, and so it should work out to some extent. I would be surprising to see them move on from that as soon as this summer, right? And then if that didn't work out kind of immediately, then they would have to, Donovan is still under contract for next year, so they would basically be trying to trade him while he still had time left on his contract, which makes some sense, but you're probably talking about a deadline kind of deal if that were to happen. And then even then, you still got Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and James Harden, right? Like, I still think like that's a decent enough team, especially in the Eastern Conference, to win some games. So, yeah, I think the Cavs have some tire fire potential, to be sure. I think they have more tire fire potential in 2028 than they do in 2027. And ultimately, to me, it still looks at like they're at least kind of an average team next year. But I agree, like there is some risk there, but I think most likely like that collapse would happen in the summer of 2027 rather than before it, and therefore hurting the Jazz's pick.
All right, last thing, and I'll set you loose. I appreciate you hopping back on. Andy's with us live in Atlanta, where the Skeleton Jazz will play the Hawks tomorrow. And this is tough because we're sitting here in early February. We still have a draft cycle. We have an off season. But the Jazz have clearly indicated to this fan base, okay, the painful rebuild is over. Thank you for continuing to support. We're going to try to give back now. Success next year for the Jazz, Andy, looks like what?
Yeah, I've been thinking, and there's been some Twitter conversation on what does the Jazz's over-under look like next year, right? Like, how good will the league expect them to be? And, like numbers in kind of the 41 range, 43 win range kind of came up. And I think that feels about right? Like, I think that's a team that fights for the bottom half of the playoffs in the West. Not one of the better teams, not one of the more established teams, a team that's still trying to figure out how to play together. But it's a team that should be able to beat a lot of the also-rans in the NBA. And I think that's, really encouraging. And I kind of see them as, a playoff team. You hope they avoid the play-in tournament. And then you hope for signs of growth from either the young talent, some of the players on the roster, maybe just some cohesion stuff between Jaren Jackson Jr. and Laurent Markkanen and Walker Kessler and so forth. But there's still pieces to be had there, right? So, I kind of see them as like a 500-ish team next year, which will be a big step forward for anyone who's been watching the team over the last 4 years.
Well, Andy, welcome on the updates for LiAngelo, or should I say Jello Ball, on the show today. Thanks for hopping back on. We'll set you loose. Travel safe, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.
All right, there he is, Andy Larson, who is on the road right now with the Utah Jazz. They're going to take on the Atlanta Hawks, kind of. Most of the roster is out. So we appreciate Andy's time. If you missed it, the Jazz, during my interview with Andy, made two deals. So Jock Landale, who was acquired in the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, has been moved to the Atlanta Hawks. Ironically enough, the Jazz are in Atlanta. 3 two-way players hopped on a plane to join the Jazz for the game tomorrow, which means more deals could be on the way. The Jazz have to dress 8 players in order to follow league rules to play in an NBA game. And then the Jazz traded for Lonzo Ball and 2 second-round picks, and then promptly waived Lonzo Ball. This was a salary dump for Cleveland, and because the Jazz had the ability to absorb Lonzo Ball in a trade exception, they just get 2 second-round picks for their troubles, and Cleveland saves some money, and now Lonzo Ball can kind of choose his destination. So a 3-team deal that kind of went down where the Hawks get Jock Landale, the Jazz get 2 second-round picks, and Cleveland saves a little bit of money. So we thought we were going to have a quiet NBA trade deadline, but we certainly have had the opposite. But more on this coming up. Tim McMahon is going to join us. He covers the Jazz for ESPN. And then Tony Jones, who currently specifically covers Philly, but he's been all over the place with his Jazz stuff as well. We'll catch up with Mike Yam live in the Bay Area to prepare for Super Bowl 60. So we got a busy Wednesday show. And before we catch a break, I got to tell you about a new client on the show, and I'm pumped because I actually went there not too long ago. There's a new burger place in Trolley Square that is unbelievable. It's called Burger Fusion. Flavorful gourmet burgers and a very unique menu, okay? So they've got the Velvet Smoke Show. Stick with me. It has creamy peanut butter, berry jam, caramelized onions, hot honey pickles, and pepper jelly aioli. I had it a couple weeks ago. It sounds wild, but it is amazing. They've got the Merlot Reserve. These are all Wagyu burgers. Velveteen cheese, bacon, an apple slice, caramelized onions, apple basil slaw, and apple aioli. And everything that they use is specifically crafted from their special blend premium chuck and Wagyu beef patties. I am telling you, it is awesome. You can pair the burgers with crispy fried Havarti pickles, fries, mozzarella squares, and much more. You can dine in, you can pick up, you can order delivery, or celebrate with catering. Burger Fusion brings gourmet taste for any day and every occasion. Stop by Burger Fusion in Salt Lake City. It's 490 and 700 East, excuse me. It's in Trolley Square. It's right next to the old Trolley Wing company, that Trolley wing spot that no longer is open, but it's right there. It's right around the corner from Whole Foods. It is awesome. If you have not been to Burger Fusion, you should go for dinner tonight or order from your favorite, DoorDash app or whatever. All right, we'll catch a break. Tim McMahon joins us coming up next on ESPN 700. Well. The first Tim McMahon hit in maybe 3 years, where we won't talk about if the Jazz are going to trade Lauri Markkanen or if Keontae George is actually good. Tim McMahon, happy Wednesday, buddy. How we doing?
Howdy, partner. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I am pumped that this front office has taken a step forward by acquiring Jaren Jackson Jr. From the Memphis Grizzlies, who at the age of 26, I think it's a great deal, Tim. Now, I feel like there's a lot left to do, but in a vacuum, your reaction to the trade the Jazz made yesterday?
You know, it's funny. How many times did you ask me about them doing some kind of core-altering trade? And I told you I didn't think they were going to sell pieces of their core. I never envisioned them as buyers before this deadline.
Yeah.
The trade was made. And I get it. I understand it. This is a classic pre-agency type of deal. The simple fact is, they were going to have a lot of cap space this summer, and they could chase some guys, but they were probably going to be used as leverage. And so better to use. They certainly decided it was better to use that cap space for a guy they knew they could get right now than wait for a whole bunch of maybes and possiblies and those sort of things. They did. Look, it wasn't without cost. They gave up 3 picks. That's a significant price tag, especially that 2031 Suns pick, as well as their pick next year, Utah's pick next year. Now, by giving up Utah's pick next year, I mean, if you didn't think they were determined to win by adding Jaren Jackson Jr., that definitely confirms it. Like, tank note era ends in mid-April.
Now, you have been my main source for intel on Walker Kessler. And, it's interesting, Tim. I feel like most people, if you don't follow the league closely or cover the league, or if you're watching NBA basketball like every night, you probably assume Jaren Jackson Jr., 6'10", power forward, defensive player of the year, is an awesome rebounder. He very much is not. Ironically enough, averages about 5.5, 6 boards a game. I feel like the synergistic fit between those two is actually something that could absolutely work. But where are we at right now with the Jazz and Walker Kessler and the potential of him coming back, and your thoughts on that fit playing next to Triple J?
Listen, I think the fit will be absolutely fine. It might be the best rim protection tandem in the NBA. Offensively, I think you're looking at more what's the fit with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen playing next to each other as forwards. And I can just tell you, Will Hardy certainly considers that the kind of challenge that he's excited about having after some of the other challenges that he's dealt with during his time as Utah's head coach. And I think it'll fit just fine because Jackson really has a lot of perimeter skills. Obviously, Lauri is primarily a perimeter player offensively. But what Jaren is not is a center. He needs to play next to a center, and they plan on having him playing next to Walker Kessler. Now, I've told you what the Jazz have in mind for Kessler's value and what Walker and his agents have in mind are two very different numbers. We'll see how that plays out. I would guess that maybe the Ainge family did a couple of fist pumps when they saw the Anthony Davis trade to the Wizards. That takes one potential suitor out of the market, that's for sure. So it might be an uncomfortable restricted free agency process. As far as I am told, though, the plan is for Walker Kessler to be part of their core moving forward. Now, alongside Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, Ace Bailey, and a top 8 pick in this draft. So, yes, you got to deal with a couple of more months of tanking, and then that's done.
Yeah, I mean, the way I framed it is Jaren Jackson Jr. is flying to Salt Lake to find out he has a bad back, right? Like the rest of this,
Sure.
right? Like the rest of the season is going to be pretty much what we've seen over the past couple of weeks, manipulating lineups in the name of draft capital, right?
It will undergo a very thorough physical, and they will certainly look out for his best long-term interests.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's what we anticipate. Let me move over here because there's some other deals. Obviously, the team you cover, Dallas, has suddenly become pretty fascinating. What does this roster need? You referenced the pick, and we're all hoping that we're going to sit around the fire and watch the lottery ping pong balls bounce our way for the first time. But if it doesn't and they land at 6 or 7 or whatever and they can't get Darren or AJ or whatever, like When you look at this roster, where do you think they're going to aim next?
Talent.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Jazz are at a point where they're, you can try to figure out positional fits in terms of like free agency. How do you expend an exception? Is there a guy you can target to fill a specific need? But wherever they land in the lottery, and obviously the hope is that it's going to be top 4. The worst case scenario is it's 9, and the problem is you don't have the pick. But if they get that lottery pick, they just have to take the best talent available. It's exactly what they did last year with Ace. And by the way, I do think Ace, like if Ace is your starting 2 guard, which I'm not sure that will be the case going into next season, but I do think there's a chance. Then you talk about a long, athletic starting lineup. But again, I just think in the draft, especially in the lottery, add talent. Will Hardy will figure out the fit. He wants to coach talent. He doesn't need it to be a roster that fits together perfectly. And, if there are awkward fits, that's something maybe long-term you figure out via the trade market and guys get moved or whatever. But as they try to take a significant leap into competitiveness, just get better players. And Jaren Jackson Jr. was a big step in that direction. By the way, Vince Williams, I think, is an interesting player.
Absolutely.
The analytics geeks love Conchar. But obviously Jaren is the kind of guy who they probably weren't going to be able to get that level of talent to come to Salt Lake City in free agency. And there was noise about like Austin Reeves. I can tell you how that would have played out. The Lakers would have ended up, just if not matching it, coming close enough to where he wasn't going to leave LA to come to Utah. So you can wait and get used for leverage, or you can pounce now. And they certainly decided that pouncing now is the better path. And they decided that it was a steep price they paid in terms of draft compensation, but they decided it was worth it.
Tim, if there's a skilled white guy out there, he will be linked to the Jazz. You just need to understand that.
Absolutely. Trust me. As Eric Woodyard, the former Deseret News beat man, told me, those guys are relatable in Salt Lake City.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. All right. The team that you cover, I hate to, revisit the Luka deal again, but it's manifested to be the worst decision in human history, not just pro basketball. They get 29 games out of Anthony Davis, and I'll give you the credit. You've been alluding to them pivoting in this direction because, look, Cooper he's so good. I mean, maybe outside of Wembanyama, that's the piece any team would love to have more than any other young player in the NBA. So your thoughts on what's next in Dallas? You've always maintained they're going to hold on to Kyrie. Has that changed? And your thoughts on what the Mavericks did today?
Yeah, I don't think anything has changed in terms of the immediate forecast for Kyrie. Never say never in this business, but I don't think there's anything coming there. And look, this trade that they made today obviously is going to be directly linked to the Luka deal. But what they had to do was say, you know what? Nothing we do is going to make that any less of a loss, right? Mm-hmm. There's no AD trade that was going to make the Luka deal a good deal. That was a sunken cost. They got a gift of a second chance to build around a prodigy when they won the lottery, lucked out in the lottery, and got Cooper Flag. So they could not go into this deadline viewing things through the Luka prism. They had to view them through the Cooper Flag prism, and that's exactly what this deal is. This isn't a deal that anybody's going to celebrate, like, hey, expiring salary and really, bad first-round picks. But it was sensible business for the Mavericks. They were the 4th most expensive team in the league before today. Now they're ducking completely under they're ducking completely under the they're under the cap now. They go into, instead of looking at like a 9-figure luxury tax bill, they're not going to be a over the cap team going in the next season. And so this is a trade that was about giving them the flexibility to build the way they need to build this roster around a 19-year-old who scored 119 points in the last 3 games.
Oof. Goodness. Yeah, Bobby's reporting the Mavs have 150 in guaranteed money. That's below the tax and the apron. So you see what they're doing. And just to kind of reiterate, they view Kyrie as someone they want around moving forward.
They do. And listen, I'm not telling you that's forever.
Right.
And look, it might come to a point, and this is purely hypothetically, but, like next year, they don't benefit from being bad unless they're really lucky again. Their pick is top 2 protected to Charlotte. After that, it's swap unprotected, unprotected pick out, unprotected swap again. So they're not going to benefit from being bad for the next 4 years, but Kyrie might, maybe it's around this time next year. Maybe it's next summer. Maybe there comes to a point, the year after that where he might go to them and say, hey, I want a chance to be on a contender again. Let's work together. And the hope there, if you're Dallas, is he's playing well enough to put them in a position where they're trading him, and be able to get real value in return. And it's not the kind of deal they made today, which was really essentially a salary dump.
So let's move back to the Jazz real quick. They still have a tremendous amount of financial flexibility and draft capital, not near as much as they had because they're going to re-sign Walker, and that'll take away their cap space next offseason. But for now, like they just absorbed Lonzo Ball's contract in exchange for 2 second-round picks, and then they waived Lonzo. Jock Landale's now in Atlanta. But prior to tomorrow at 11 o'clock Mountain Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, when this thing is done, do you think we'll see more movement from the Jazz?
I always leave that open, right?
Yeah.
I was told if there's more movement, it's probably the sort of thing, that you saw today where it's, down the roster type of stuff, adding second-round picks, those sort of deals. But, listen, man, there's some people, I don't think this is going to happen, but there's some people around the league who have their eyes wide open for Kessler potentially even getting traded before tomorrow. So, I would bet against that. They tell me he's in their plans for the future. I'm going to take them at their word, but we've seen too much just over the last 12-plus months to be shocked by anything.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We are hearing reports that the Jazz put a bunch of two-way guys on a plane today to go to Atlanta because they have to at least dress 8 players to play against the Hawks. So maybe that indicates something is afoot. But I know you're busy, so I'll set you loose after this. A lot of excitement in the market now. A lot of people waiting for this front-facing move that we get now with Jaren Jackson Jr. It doesn't change the fact that the Western Conference has other teams that are trying to win basketball games. So what does success, Tim, look like for the Jazz next season?
A competitive team. I think a reasonable goal for the Jazz next year is to be a play-in team, and the play-in is not a bad spot if you're ascending. The play-in is not a bad spot if Keontae George is continuing to get better and Ace Bailey takes a leap, and you've got an exciting lottery pick that's showing some promise. Jaren Jackson Jr. fits in that window at 26. I guess it'll be 27 next year. So, I think that a fun play-in team would be a successful next step for the Jazz.
All right, buddy, we'll set you loose. I know you're super busy. Thanks for the time. Be well, okay?
I appreciate it.
Tim McMahon, Ben McMahon from the Hoop Collective podcast. Of course, you can see him on NBA Today on ESPN, covers the Jazz, and maybe we'll actually get Tim in town next year when the Jazz are serious about competing. We'll kind of, I'm drinking through a fire hose here. Well, on the other side of a break, we're going to reset and tell you everything that has gone down today because the moves continue to come in at a rapid pace. The Jazz, when I was interviewing Andy Larson earlier today, the Jazz made 2 trades. Okay, number one. Well, actually, it turns out this is one transaction. So the Jazz traded for Lonzo Ball and 2 second-round picks, and then they moved Jock Landale on to Atlanta. Interestingly enough, the Jazz are in Atlanta right now to play the Hawks tomorrow. So Jock Landale was on his way to Atlanta to play for the Jazz. Now he's on his way to Atlanta to play for the Hawks. The Jazz have waived Lonzo Ball, so this was a salary dump for the Cavs. And in exchange for their trouble, the Utah Jazz received 2 second-round picks. As I referenced, they put a bunch of two-way guys on a plane today to go to Atlanta, so that indicates that some Other moves might be on the way, but we'll kind of get you up to date. Don't forget, Tony Jones is going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour today. Then we'll go live to the Bay Area where Mike Yam from the NFL Network will join us. But I have a special guest live in studio, my friend Shelly from Wasatch Medical Spa. Shelly, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today, Spence.
Thanks for joining me live in studio. It was really great to meet you last week. And you have a brand new technology that you have brought to the market called Apex RF. Let's hear about it.
Yes. So at Wasatch Medical Spa, we are always on the cutting edge of new education and new technologies. And we are proud to be Utah's first to introduce Apex RF.
Mm-hmm.
It's a revolutionary technology for men for intimate health. It helps improve size, girth, sensation, duration, and it can also help improve partner satisfaction. The technology is just heat. It's radio frequency heat.
Okay.
And it improves blood flow and collagen growth in the area, and it helps with any type of intimate issues that men have. You know, many men don't think they have struggles because they may not have ED, but the majority of men above about age 30, at least 50% of them struggle in some regard with sexual dysfunction.
So let me follow up on that because I think the natural reaction would be if I don't have ED, I don't have an issue. What other signs are there out there that you actually do have an issue and maybe technology like this can help you?
Sometimes it's just like duration.
Okay.
They struggle with duration, or sometimes they have premature ejaculation or something like that. Or sometimes it's just not as good as it used to be
Okay.
when they were younger.
So there are several different signs, actually, because I do think that a natural thought would be if I don't have ED, I'm good. But there are other things that men should watch out for, and this technology can help improve all of that, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
In fact, when we first got the technology, we tried it out on the spouses of our staff. And none of them thought they had issues.
Right.
They all thought, I don't have any problem at all. And I am not kidding you, every single one of them noticed improvement.
Okay.
And our patients have been the same.
So put that mic a little closer to your mouth a little bit. I have to wonder, when you told your staff, like, we're trying this out on your partners, were they all like down to give it a whirl, or were some of the partners kind of like a little bit skeptical?
Maybe a couple of them were a little bit skeptical at first because they didn't think they had issues.
Right.
I mean, one of them's only in his 30s. And so he just thought, I don't think I need this. But I said, that's part of your wife working here. You're going to do these treatments. And they all loved it.
Okay. Well, that's great. So outside of just ED, you referenced it. Go over a list of the other things that you said this helps with. Now that we have you a little closer to the microphone, I think that's important.
Okay. It helps with size, girth, sensation, and duration.
Oh.
Which also can help with the partner satisfaction because it's just easier.
Of course. And, you know, oftentimes in relationships, if that's not part of a healthy situation, it can cause like breakups and havoc, right? Like, it's very important.
It's really important.
Yeah.
And it opens up the conversation with sexual health between you and your partner.
Sure. So you referenced the treatment. Is it painful at all?
Not at all.
Okay.
It actually is just a warm, comfortable procedure.
And how many sessions before, you actually see the results you're looking for?
Most men see improvement within the first 4 sessions.
Okay.
Some after the first session, but typically we recommend 5 or 6 treatments about a week apart over a period of 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. And then tell me about some of the feedback you've received. I mean, we already talked about the spouses of your staff, but, other candidates that have come in, maybe a little bit nervous because it's kind of an awkward thing to talk about. What are some of the results and some of the feedback that you've received?
All of our feedback has been great.
Good.
If it's a good candidate. We have very professional nurses, and they will talk about the procedure, do a consult for about 30 minutes before the first treatment, making it very comfortable. They talk to you the whole time, so it's not uncomfortable. It just makes it very private and a comfortable situation.
Okay, so again, things like this sometimes can be a little bit awkward to talk about, but you make all of your candidates feel very comfortable. I read earlier that this was a technology that was initially used for women. Is that true?
Yes, we have had a technology called FormaV for about 5 years, but it's been around. Similar technologies have been around for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
We've had Forma V, which is bipolar radio frequency heat treatment for women's intimate health as well. And it worked so well with women that they just this last year came out with the men's health version.
Very awesome. All right. So before we get to next steps and the deal you have for our listeners, talk about, because and I'm just learning this in real time, it feels like candidates could be a wide variety, from erectile dysfunction or somebody who's just wanting to improve their intimacy with their partner. So who is a candidate, Shelley, for this treatment?
Basically, if you have any sexual struggles at all, obviously there are people who are not a good candidate. Like if you're very overweight, lose weight first, and this will work better. If you have sleep apnea, take care of that first, and this will work better. Anyone who has any circulation issues, diabetes, or just wants to improve performance would be a good candidate.
Awesome. So what's the next steps for our listeners who are tuned in? Like, yeah, that sounds like something I'm interested in. What are the next steps?
So next step would be to go to our website at wasatchmedicalspa.com and schedule a consult and first treatment. After the consult, there's no obligation. You don't have to do the first treatment. The consult is free. But if you decide to move forward with it, which most men do, then they will go ahead and do the first treatment, which takes about 20, 25 minutes to do the first treatment.
Great. So go to wasatchmedicalspa.com. I also have a phone number. Can they call this number?
They can call the number.
Okay, so it's wasatchmedicalspa.com, or you can call 385-333-6000. That's 385-333-6000. 385-333-6000. Shelley, thank you so much, okay?
Thank you.
All right, we'll catch a break. Coming up next, it's been a wild day in the landscape of pro basketball, so we'll kind of reset and tell you what we have going on. Want to let you know that Post Malone and Jelly Roll are taking over Rice-Eccles Stadium on July the 28th. You can text now to win a pair of tickets to 877-353-0700, 877-353-0700. Details on our app and on ESPN700sports.com. Text Jelly Roll right now to 877-353-0700. More next. Keep it here on ESPN 700. The triumphant return of Tony Jones to the program today. Tony covered the Utah Jazz for a number of different years. He currently is covering the Philadelphia 76ers, and he has been all over the place with all of these trades. And if you're just joining us, a bevy of trades have gone down today, a couple involving the Utah Jazz. So let's just kind of reset. Utah football signed a couple of players today, and we will go live to the Bay Area to catch up with our friend Mike Yam from the NFL Network to preview Super Bowl 60 between Seattle and New England. So, of course, the big news that came down yesterday is the Utah Jazz have acquired a 26-year-old two-time All-Star and former Defensive Player of the Year, Jaren Jackson Jr., and I sent out on social, this indicates to me that there's a lot more left for Justin Zanuck, Austin Ainge, and Danny Ainge to do to fill out this roster. And a lot of it may come our way during the offseason because the Jazz have maintained their draft capital this year, meaning Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly to Salt Lake to learn that he has a bad back. He's not going to be playing a lot. We're not going to see him tomorrow against Atlanta. The Jazz flew out several two-way players today to Atlanta. And what that means is they've got to fill out their team to play the Hawks tomorrow, and you have to have at least 8 players dressed in order to play an NBA game. And we got the availability report, and no surprise, Jaren Jackson Jr. will not play. That trade is waiting to kind of become consummated. Keontae George will be out tomorrow. Walker Kessler, of course, out for the year. Then John Conchar is not playing. Jock Landale, if you missed it, has been traded to Atlanta. Vince Williams Jr. will not dress either because that trade is pending, and Kevin Love is questionable with an illness, so you will see Larry Marketing. But if you missed it, the Jazz made a couple of deals earlier today. As I referenced, it was a 3-team trade. And it was 2 separate transactions, but it ended up being part of one deal. So the Jazz traded for Lonzo Ball and 2 second-round picks, and then they sent Jock Landale to the Atlanta Hawks. Jock was on his way to Atlanta to play for the Jazz, and now he's on the way to Atlanta to play for the Hawks. And then the Jazz are expected to waive Lonzo Ball, allowing him to be a free agent. So essentially what this is, it's a salary dump for Cleveland because they just added James Harden and some other pieces, Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. And then the Jazz had a trade exception where they could absorb Lonzo's deal and then waive him. And for their troubles, essentially they were able to get 2 second-round picks. And then Jock Landale lands in Atlanta. So that's the latest on the Jazz. They still have a lot of draft capital and flexibility to potentially make some moves. The Chicago Bulls traded Kobe White and Mike Conley Jr. to Charlotte in exchange for Colin Sexton, Osame Dieng, and 3 second-round picks. The Hornets are expected to waive Mike Conley Jr., who's expected to end up back in Minnesota. So Mike Conley Jr., who, of course, lives in Minnesota, playing for the Timberwolves, after playing for the Utah Jazz, for a minute may have thought he was going to live in Chicago, then for a minute thought he might live in Charlotte. Well, it looks like he might just be able to stay in Minnesota. Charlotte is sneaky right now. They've won like 7 straight games, and Kobe White is a really good player. This is actually a good deal for Charlotte, and Kobe White played his college ball at UNC, so he has ties there. Rumors out there that the Lakers and the Warriors are in conversation about a Draymond Green deal. They would land Draymond in Los Angeles to play for the Lakers. Nothing consummated there as of yet. Minnesota is rumored to be essentially positioning themselves to maybe make a move to get Giannis next to Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert, because that deal would probably involve Julius Randle. The Oklahoma City Thunder, in a very sneaky way, may have made among the best acquisitions throughout the entire process. Porter, we were talking about this earlier. So the Philadelphia 76ers, who essentially have their backcourt, not just for the present, for the future, Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, they traded Jared McCain to Oklahoma City today. In exchange, they're going to get the Rockets' first-round pick this year and then 3 second-round picks. Jared McCain is 21 years old. And prior to tearing his meniscus, he was the front runner to win Rookie of the Year. I mean, for all the conversation about Anthony Davis to Washington and Jaren Jackson Jr. to Utah and what's next, like Sam Presti just continues to sit here with this treasure trove of assets. And this is like the perfect acquisition for OKC.
Well, and you mentioned it there, right? He's 21 now, coming off a meniscus injury, but you saw what he was bringing to Philadelphia's roster. late in the year and throughout the course of 2025. And even bigger than all of that is just how much he complements OKC's roster. He's a really good defender, really good spot-up shooter. He can handle the ball. He's kind of I don't want to say combo guard because that's not really a thing anymore. He's a guy that can play without the ball in his hand and still be impactful as a spot-up shooter, as a guy that's going to defend on one side and be a threat from the corner on the other. Just a really, really solid player that may not jump off the page as much as an Anthony Davis, as much as a Jaren Jackson Jr., but when you combine it with the fact that he's going to OKC and the roster that I think he just fits perfectly in, one of the better deals of the deadline, of course, from Sam Presti.
If you're an NBA fan, you probably need to cheer for San Antonio. Who over the next 4 or 5 years, look, things happen,
right? Players
get injured, players become disgruntled. But if we just assume everything on paper is everything on paper, who even lives in Oklahoma City's cul-de-sac right now?
I don't think anyone does at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, as you mentioned, things happen. You get into a playoff series and guys get injured, right? We didn't really think anyone was in the cul-de-sac with the Golden State Warriors, and then LeBron James, right? Like there are things that can happen, and Victor Wembanyama is a player that you can look at as maybe a potential just complete game changer, right? You get into a series and the best player on the floor is going to have some semblance of a chance, regardless of the roster on the other side. But OKC is building just a ridiculous, can we call it a compendium?
If Trey is listening, we can call it a compendium of assets for Oklahoma City.
But not just assets. They have assets, and they already have the roster.
Yeah.
That's the most frustrating part if you're a GM around the league. Usually you build up all these draft picks. You're looking at 2026 and 2027 and 2028, and you have these first-round picks. Oh, and we also just won an NBA championship and already have a bunch of players that are tied up for the next several years on the roster. It's a phenomenal coup by Sam Presti and OKC so far.
So a couple of things to kind of tie this up. The Cavs had a projected luxury tax bill of $120 million. It's now $65 million after the Lonzo Ball deal. And here, real quick, here's Oklahoma City's roster. Thomas Sorber is 20. Nikola Topic is 20. Jared McCain is 21. Kaysen Wallace is 22. Chet Holmgren is 23. A.J. Mitchell is 23. Jalen Williams is 23. The other Jalen Williams, who's not very good, is 24. Lou Dort, 26. Isaiah Joe, 27. Aaron Wiggins, 27. Shea is 27. Isaiah Hartenstein is 27. And then they have Caruso and Kendrick Williams, who are 31. This roster is built for like a decade. But we'll get back to this coming up in just a little bit. We do have a new client on the show. I want to give a shout-out to Wasatch Wagyu. They hooked Porter and I up with some beef jerky a couple of weeks ago. It's really, really good. And for a while, they were giving you 10% off your order. But good news, they have upped that offer to 25% off. They're located in Heber, Utah. All the cows are bred here locally, and they produce the best Wagyu beef at a couple of their New York steaks. I used the promo code ESPN25 to get 25% off, and I ordered like 10 New York steaks, and I've just been cooking them at home. They also have burger beef, roast, tomahawk steaks, fillets, and now, as I referenced, some of the best beef jerky around. I want to give a shout-out to Greg and Stacy, the owners, who are really good people. Go to wasatchwagyu.com and check out their menu. Pick out what you want and get a limited-time discount on their Wagyu beef of 25% off. Type in ESPN25 at checkout. Get 25% off your entire order at wasatchwagyu.com. We go from one Wasatch company to another Wasatch company as joining us live in studio. And we met last week, and she's making her radio debut, and she's doing a hell of a job. It's my friend Shelly from Wasatch Medical Spa. Shelly, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show.
I love having you in studio. It's always fun to get to know a client. So we talked last segment about this treatment. We'll get to that treatment in a moment. But let's hear more about you, your background, and kind of your clinic and the educational process you've gone through.
Awesome. My name is Shelly Wilkinson, and I'm a board-certified family nurse practitioner for the last 23 years. 12 years ago, I opened my own integrative medicine clinic called Wasatch Medical Spa. We're located on 33rd South in Mill Creek, and we provide natural, holistic, non-invasive solutions to health and wellness. We're always on the cutting edge of education. That is a key important feature of our spa, and we're always learning about new technologies, and we are Utah's first to introduce this new Apex RF for men.
And tell us about your staff, because you were referencing during a break that education is a big part of what you're looking to do for your staff to make sure that they're right where they need to be, yeah?
Yes, we have a staff of 15 women, and they're all amazing. We have nurse practitioners, we have a holistic health nurse, we have nurses, we have educators for our hormone program, and they're all amazing, very professional, and up to date on the current research.
Okay, one of the things you referenced during the break, because we have a lot of listeners, and we've had other clients on the show before that have talked about solutions for erectile dysfunction. And if I'm honest, they didn't really offer solutions that worked. And we had a lot of listeners that went in and tried it, and they were disappointed. But you have a much different approach. And it's more, you reference holistic, it's also just more kind of like an umbrella for not just erectile dysfunction, but any sort of issue that you're having in the bedroom at all. This technology is new to the market, so let's hear about it.
Yes, so common treatment options for sexual dysfunction that have been available are over-the-counter medications, prescription medications, but the efficacy of those diminishes over time, and they just kind of stop working. There's shockwave therapy, there's vacuum devices, there's surgery, there's penile implants you can do. None of that really sounds good to me. Apex RF is a game changer when it comes to efficacy and comfort and no side effects.
And it is brand new to the market. So if you have gone in for the shockwave therapy, I think it was called acoustic wave therapy for a while, and people try to like, hey, dude, it doesn't work. But this actually gets results. So let's get into it. First of all, is the treatment painful at all?
Not at all.
Tell us about the process.
It's very comfortable. It's just radio frequency heat to the area, and it takes about 20 minutes or so. And it's very relaxing. Some of the men say it feels like a hot stone massage.
Okay. All right. Now, you referenced maybe some listeners who have suffered from ED or some other, sexual related issues are on medication. Can you combine this with medication, or ultimately is the goal to have this replace the medication you're on?
You can absolutely take it with medication. Many of the men who are using this find that they don't need their medication anymore. Always consult your physician who gave you the medication before you go off or before you start it. But yes, it can be a replacement or in addition.
Now let's talk about the process. The consultation, what does that look like? And then how many sessions typically do men go through before they start to see the results that they're looking for?
So we offer a free 30-minute consultation with the first treatment. And we go over the science behind the machine and how it works and what they can expect right after. And then they usually do a series of 4 to 6 treatments over the next 8 weeks. And they typically will see results extending for at least 3 months.
Are we looking at potential side effects? What does that kind of look like?
There are no side effects
to
this. You might be a little red, a little swollen for an hour or two, but there are no side effects.
Okay, so let's bottom line this, because you're good to educate our listeners. I think I would imagine most people are just thinking like, well, I don't have erectile dysfunction. I think I'm doing okay. But this is a treatment that can really cover a wide variety of things. So who, Shelley, would you say is a candidate for this?
So any man that's experiencing any sexual challenge due to blood flow or diabetes, just age-related changes. Things change as we age. And any mild or moderate erectile problem that they have, we'll just do a consultation and talk to you about your issues and then decide if you're a good candidate or not.
And what are the results that you've seen? Some of the feedback, you referenced that your staff, 15 women, you had their spouses come in to go through it, and they all seem to be very pleased. So results, I mean, this is what it's about, right? We're about solutions. What are some of the results that you've seen from men who come in and go through this?
So I am telling you this works. It improves size, girth, sensation, duration. It improves blood flow. It gives you stronger, firmer erections, enhanced function, improved sensation, restored confidence in your intimacy, and increased satisfaction for both partners.
I was going to say, the one thing that really, really matters is the feedback from the partners of the men who go through it. So what did your staff say about the results their partners saw?
The staff all say that their intimacy has improved as well.
Okay.
It didn't just improve their spouse, it improved theirs.
Awesome. All right. Last thing, let's call to action. First step, where do they go? How do they book the consultation? What's next?
So go to wasatchmedicalspa.com and you can book a consult plus your first treatment. And then we will go ahead and schedule your follow-up treatments after that. Typically, they're a week or two apart for 4 to 6 treatments.
Okay, there you go. And they're giving you a free consultation because they're a new client on the station. So take advantage of that. Go to wasatchmedicalspa.com, 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 or pick up the phone right now and dial 385-333-6000. That's 385-333-6000, 385-333-6000. Wasatch Medical Spa here in Mill Creek. Shelly, good to see you.
Hey, thanks so much, Spence.
All right, we'll catch a break. We're going to bring in Tony Jones coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. Oh man, we got excited listeners. Listeners are gathering around the radio because we have been teasing it all day. It is the triumphant return, and there's no better day, quite frankly, with everything that's going on. He was with us for a long, long time, and he's now left us, but only physically because he's always with us in spirit. Tony Jones, my goodness, TJ, happy Wednesday, man. How you doing?
Yeah, you really gave me the grandiose entrance, by playing Tribe Called Quest for my walk-up song.
Only the best for you.
Like that.
Yeah, only the best for you, as you know. Yeah. No, I mean, we've done Biggie for you for a while, but I think you and I are of one mind. The Tribe is the greatest hip-hop group of all time, right?
Ever.
Yeah.
All time. Not even close.
Yep. I'm with you. Tony, look, you're now covering the 76ers, but you've been all over the place with the trade deadline, and we got to start with the news that Austin Ainge, Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck have cashed in some assets to bring in a 26-year-old two-time All-Star, former Defensive Player of the Year. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the newest Jazzman. What do you think?
Oh, I love that deal. I thought it wasn't cheap. It was not a cheap deal. A lot of draft assets go out with it. But I think the context of that is that, GMs around the league are not all of that bullish on the 2027 NBA draft. Certainly not anywhere close to what the 2026 NBA draft is. So, the Jazz assume and say, hey, we'll send out 2 picks from that draft. We still have a pick left. But the 2031 Phoenix pick, that probably hurts because that has the potential to be a very, very, very high value pick. But, in terms of the fit, I mean, you're creating a jumbo-sized front court that can also walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Jaren Jackson Jr. is, offensively, he's, one of the best shooting big men in the league. He's also one of the best ball-handling big men in the league. In terms of creation, he can create his shot even against smaller defenders. And defensively, he's one of the best rim protectors in the league. You pair him with, Walker Kessler, who's one of the better rebounders in the league and one of the best rim protectors in the league. And, you shift Lowry marketing down to the 3, and, that's one of the best shooters in the league and one of the best scorers in the league, regardless of size. So, there's going to be a lot of size, a lot of versatility in that front court. The Jazz still maintain the ability to keep their top 8 protected first-round pick in 2026. I expect a lot of gastric distress down the stretch
Yep.
from a lot of their really good players, Rodney Hood disease. And I expect them to do whatever they can to potentially keep that pick. So, things are looking up for Utah. They're finally on the verge of being done with the tank and kind of turning things around and getting back to respectability and then some.
Yeah, as you referenced, I keep saying Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly to Salt Lake to learn that he has a bad back, right? So ultimately, like the rest of the way, we are going to see manipulating lineups to hold on to the asset. Yes, let's be very clear about this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and rightfully so. Look, if I got to take a couple of fines from the NBA because Lowry and Keontae and Jaren Jackson Jr. are in and out of the lineup, then that's just what I'm going to have to do. If I got to play my 2 ways to lose as many games as possible, you have to keep the pick in this draft. This is the best draft class I have seen since 2003. And if, for those at home who aren't familiar with what I'm referencing, that's LeBron James's draft class. This is the best draft class I've seen since then. And, it's just so many great players in that top 10, in that lottery. You have to keep the pick. So if I'm the Jazz, I'm doing whatever I have to do, legally or illegally, morally or immorally, to keep the pick. And, and if they get really lucky and, your 5th starter next year is AJ DeBanza or Darren Peterson, this team can get back to contention very, very quickly.
So when it comes to the trade deadline will come and go tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We saw a minor move today where Jock Landale is going to end up in Atlanta, and the Jazz are in Atlanta. So Landale thought he was flying to Atlanta to play for the Jazz. He's now flying to Atlanta to play for the Hawks. And then Cleveland has added, of course, James Harden and some other pieces, so they needed to shed some salary. The Jazz had the trade exception, so they absorbed Lonzo Ball's contract, and then the reports are they're going to waive him. And then for their troubles, they get 2 second-round picks. Right, Tony? Is that how you understand that transaction?
Yep, they get 2 second-round picks. According to my sources, they get Cleveland's 2028 and 2032 second-round picks. So they have the right to draft a seventh grader at this point. So it's these are the Jazz actually experienced both ends of the spectrum with this trade deadline so far. They became a buyer, and then in another trade, they became a team that facilitates and is still taking on salary in terms of still taking on assets. So this is a good piece of business from Utah. My sources, say that they're, like other reports, they're going to waive Lonzo, and he's going to become a free agent. And, I wish the best to Lonzo. I don't think that he's an NBA-level player anymore. So it'll be interesting to see if somebody signs him for the remainder of the season. His stint in Cleveland did not go well at all in terms of how he's played. And, it's just kind of sad that the injuries have derailed his career and derailed what could have been with him, because he could have been a really, really good player in this league.
Yeah, I agree with that. So prior to tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, are you expecting anything else significant from the Jazz?
I think that they're going to keep their options open, and I think that, they're going to explore. They have, flexibility. Let's see what they do with Yusuf Nurkic, because, he helps them win a lot. Let's see what they do with Kevin Love up until the deadline and beyond the deadline. Let's see if they buy him out, if they don't trade him. But what they need to do is strip the roster down to the point where they can pretty much just play guys that are going to help what they need to do for the remainder of the season. And listen, those guys, whoever they are, whether it's Elijah Harkless or whoever it is, they're going to be doing a great service, because the Jazz will probably end up getting a top 6 to 8 pick just for that service.
So when you look at the roster, because after the deal came down for Triple J, you're just looking at the roster, and there's so much to like and so much to be excited about, but it does feel like some other potential moves are needed and potentially on the way. So if it's not prior to tomorrow at 11 a.m. as the trade deadline comes and goes, and maybe you have sourcing on this, do you think maybe they're going to wait to see what they can get in the draft before deciding what their next play is? And what do you think they need to add to this roster?
Well, I think, they're going to see what they get in the draft, see where their draft positioning is, see what they can get in the draft, and then, take, some of their remaining assets and money and, some of the cap stuff that they have, and, add around what the core is. They're going to have to figure out how, at what level they can keep Walker Kessler. I do not expect that to be a rosy negotiation. I expect that to kind of be contentious in a little bit, but we'll see what happens. And then, in terms of the draft, I mean, obviously the Moby Dicks, so to speak, are Darren Peterson and AJ Devanza. You get one of those two, you're set. But there's a kid out of Illinois named Keaton Wagler, who I just think is phenomenal. He's 6'6" point guard. He reminds me of a 6'6" version of Jamal Murray. Just can really shoot, really smooth, get to his spots off the dribble. And, this team needs another dynamic ball handler. If you're going to start 3 7-footers, and even though 2 of those guys are pretty good off the dribble, you need somebody that's also going to be able to make plays with Keontae George and even Isaiah Collier coming off the bench. So, I think that, if they don't get the first 2, Keaton Wagler, Kingston Flemings out of Houston, those are probably the next 2 guys that are their best fits for the Jazz. And, we'll see what happens. It'll be really interesting if they get number 3. And that means they won't get the first 2. But, I don't know how much Cam Boozer fits with the Jazz right now, considering what they just did. So we'll see if they get the number 3 pick, whether they go with the best player available, which is Cam Boozer, or if they, draft a fit.
So you referenced something that has been a pretty consistent theme when Tim McMahon has joined us, and he joined us earlier today, and that is I don't want to be too strong here. I'm not going to say a fracture between the Jazz and Walker Kessler, but a disagreement potentially about what Walker is worth and how much they want to pay him and how much he wants to get paid. And that's the reality of the NBA. It's called negotiation. What's your understanding about the relationship between Walker Kessler's camp and the Utah Jazz? And do you think there is a number that Walker could go get on the open market that would scare them away?
Well, I think this summer's going to tell a lot to whether or not the relationship is just a business fracture or if it's a personal fracture. Right now, I think it's a business fracture. I think that the sides are significantly apart in terms of what they want to get paid. I actually agree with both sides. Like, I agree with the Jazz. You don't really want to pay your center max money. And I agree with Walker Kessler's camp in terms of, Walker Kessler is really good and he's really important. And he's, a guy that's going to go out and get you 11 points, 15 rebounds, 3 or 4 block shots. And he's going to blow up the other team's offense kind of single-handedly. He's kind of like Rudy Gobert in terms of he raises the level of your defense. He raises the floor of your defense just by being on the floor. So I agree with Walker Kessler's camp in terms of that's worth a lot of money. And I agree with the Jazz in terms of, we shouldn't fundamentally pay our center $35, $40 million a year. I'm not saying that that's what, the asking price is, but just saying one of the reasons why the Jazz traded Rudy Gobert was they didn't want to pay him $45 million a year. So it's still that same philosophy. So, I think, it's going to lie somewhere in the middle in terms of, where it happens. But, the Jazz see Walker as a foundational piece. They have team control. So, at the end of the day, I still think that Walker's going to end up with the Jazz on some sort of long-term deal. So
just to follow up, you would not characterize this relationship as unsalvageable, would you?
No, I would not. That was an unneeded shot.
That wasn't a shot. It's a throwback is what it is. You were proven to be right, Tony. I mean, time backed up your assertion. A little inside joke for longtime listeners and old school Jazz fans. But let me move over into this. To start the year for the Jazz, there was a little bit there was some hope, but there's also some anxiety. Like, will any of these young players actually take a real step forward to indicate the process is working and maybe allow them to go all in on something like they did yesterday? How much has Keontae George's growth related to the decision-making process for this front office to bring in a player like Jaren Jackson Jr.?
Oh, I think it was absolute to it because, now you look at it like this and, you have 3 guys who are potentially all-star level players. Jaren Jackson Jr. has made 2 all-star games. Larry Markins made an all-star game. He was an all-star starter. And Keontae George I would think if the Jazz were in the fifth spot in the Western Conference instead of 13th or whatever they are, Keontae George would have been an All-Star as well. So, his leap from last year to this year, it's an uncommon leap. You don't see that every day. And, it's a unique leap in terms of a guy who had trouble drawing fouls his first 2 or 3 years, going from that to a foul drawing savant in his third year. So, he's figured out the game. The game has slowed down for him. He's, taken the game seriously. He's, been mature, and he's been a worker, and the work is paying off for him, or it has paid off for him. And I think that there are a couple levels that he still has, in him before he reaches his peak.
You referenced a player earlier that I want to hone in on, because when the trade went down, it's funny, Tony, in this business, as you know, when you're just doing something throughout the course of your day, you can tell if something has happened based off of how much your cell phone is going off. And so I'm like, all right, either somebody is dead or the Jazz made a trade. Thank goodness the Jazz made a trade, because my cell phone would not stop going off. And the majority of the texts were, all right, love that we got Jaren Jackson Jr. Are any of these other players part of the future? And I also honed in on Vince Williams Jr., who might be the best perimeter defensive player on the roster immediately. Historically speaking, he has been a guy that is mostly a defensive stopper. But when you look at the past few games, he put up 16 against Minnesota, double digits against New Orleans and Charlotte. I feel like there's a chance the Jazz view him as more than a throw-in piece to this deal. Tell me your thoughts.
I would agree with you completely. The one thing that this Jazz team needs is a perimeter guy who can stop guys at the point of attack, and that's Vince Williams. He's 6'5". He has long arms. He's a dog defensively. But he can handle the ball a little bit. Can't really shoot it, but he can get to the basket and he can do stuff off the dribble. He's not a complete zero on offense, which is pretty important in terms of what his role could be. And I would go so far as envisioning him, in terms of if Keontae's your starter, Lowry's your starter, Jaren Jackson Jr. is your starter, and Walker is your starter, he could slide in as a fifth starter because he doesn't need the basketball in order to be effective. His effectiveness comes from guarding the best perimeter player on the other team. So, I think that he's an important part of what the Jazz got, and I tweeted as much, and I think that it was, something that, was kind of undersold and under-talked about.
All right, Tom, last thing, I'll set you loose because I know you're busy. It now is clear that the Jazz believe that they can be serious about competing next season. We've already discussed what they're going to do the rest of the way, which is manipulate lineups for draft capital, which is what they should do. This does not change the fact that the NBA's Western Conference is a bear with a lot of really good basketball teams who will be serious about competing next year. So win total, playoff appearance, what does success for the Utah Jazz look like next season?
I mean, if you have Keontae George, Lowry Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler is healthy, and you stay relatively healthy, and you fill the rest of the lineup with, veterans, I just don't see why a goal of yours, if you're Utah, is not to get into the top six and get into the playoffs. Do I think that, they'll vault to the top of the Western Conference? No, but this is a team that's going to be on the younger side. They have a God-tier coach because, Will Hardy is a great, great coach. They're going to have, kind of uncommon size, but that size is also going to be versatile. It's not going to be a bunch of dumb oafs who can't run or jump, which is really unique. And, and they're going to have, one of the more dynamic guards in the league leading it. So, it'll be interesting to see if the Jazz keep the pick, who they come out with. But, like I tweeted, I mean, if they run into a little bit of lottery luck and they get one of the big two, this is a team that has a chance to really take off next year.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate the time. I know you're busy today. Tell our listeners where they can go get all your work, all right?
You can just check me out at The Athletic, and you can hit me up on Twitter, and I'll probably answer you.
Thank you, my brother. We miss you. Be safe. Nothing but love, okay?
Miss you guys too, man. I appreciate it.
All right, the great Tony Jones, who covered the Jazz here for a long, long time, and now he's covering the Sixers, but he has been all over the NBA trade deadline. So if you're looking for some content there, at T Jones on the NBA is where you find him. All right, before we catch a break, joining me live in studio once again is my friend Shelly from Wasatch Medical Spa. Shelly, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Spence.
Thanks for joining us live in studio. It's always nice to actually see the face and get to know people. Before we get to the technology, Wasatch Medical Spa, tell us about yourself, tell us about the staff, and why making sure that you're as educated as possible is a point of emphasis for you.
So I'm a family nurse practitioner, board certified for the last 23 years. I opened my own practice, an integrative medicine clinic called Wasatch Medical Spa 12 years ago. We have a women-owned business with a women staff. And so we have 15 staff members total, and they are so smart and so professional. We really focus on education in what we do, and so that our staff can be as educated as possible when providing treatment and care for our patients.
And you referenced something off air I think it's important to bring on air. There's a very unique educational opportunity that only exists in our state when it comes to men's sexual wellness, and you guys lean into that. Can you share some insight there?
Yes, there is only one research-based natural hormone training in the country, and we don't learn it in med school, nurse practitioner school, PA school. And it's all research-based, 80 hours of going over study after study after study. So all of my staff have gone through that training multiple times, and we're very educated when it comes to the hormone arena. In fact, in the case of sexual dysfunction, hormones only account for about 6% of ED and sexual dysfunction. So while testosterone can be extremely beneficial for these things, it's not the whole picture. 70% of sexual dysfunction in ED comes from vascular issues and diabetes. And this new technology we have addresses those. It's called Apex RF, and it's a heat therapy for men's health.
So you referenced, we were talking about this off air, it's a taboo topic for men specifically when it comes to sexual dysfunction because there's probably embarrassment. You probably feel shamed. For gentlemen out there that are feeling that way right now, it kind of alleviates some fears as far as what this process entails.
Oh, come see us.
Yeah.
It is so low-key. Our staff is so professional. It's a one-on-one consultation where we can just talk about issues. You don't have to be in front of a bunch of people or talking about it with other men. You come in for your consult. We discuss any issues that you may have, and sometimes you don't even think you have any issues, but you just want to improve your sexual performance, and this can help. In fact, if it's not too personal, I'll share when my husband and I started testosterone, it cut my climax time in half from like an hour to 30 minutes. And then we did Apex, and neither of us thought that my husband needed this treatment. I just needed a guinea pig to practice on. And we were both astonished because doing the treatments for him, within the first few treatments, my climax time went down from 30 minutes to 10 minutes. So it's been awesome.
You cut 20 minutes off, So it's awesome for the man, probably regaining some confidence, but also the partner is satisfied too, which may be the most important part of this, right?
Yeah. So men and women come in for testosterone therapy, but also men come in for Apex because not only will it help you, but it will help your partner.
So talk about, because I didn't know this, and you're educating me in real time, the range of sexual dysfunction. I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't have an ED. But there are so many things in between like full function and ED that this technology helps with. Tell us about those things, because I think that's knowledge a lot of people don't have.
Sometimes you have an issue with size or girth, making it hard to satisfy your partner.
Right, yeah.
And it can help with that. Sometimes it's just you don't have very long duration, or maybe it's just not as good as it used to be. So age is going to change things. It's going to change the collagen. It's going to change the blood flow. And this technology, Apex RF, helps with both of those issues.
All right. So how do they get a hold of you and, schedule a consultation? What are the next steps in this process, Shelley?
So next step would be to go to our website at wasatchmedicalspa.com and schedule a consult plus a first appointment. Your consult is free. If you choose to move forward with the treatment, we can do the treatment the same day within 20 minutes, and then we'll get you scheduled for your series.
Okay, bottom line, it's a free consultation, so definitely take them up on that as a result of them being a client on the show. It's Wasatch Medical Spa. Wasatch Medical Spa. You can go to wasatchmedicalspa.com. That's wasatchmedicalspa.com, or pick up the phone and dial this number right now, 385-333-6000. That's 385-333-6000, 385-333-6000. It's our friends at Wasatch Medical Spa. Shelley, thank you.
Thank you so much, Spence.
We'll catch a break. Mike Yam joins us live from, I believe, the Bay Area to talk some Super Bowl. Coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, the news is coming fast and furious today. The Utah Jazz made a couple of other minor moves. We'll tell you what those are in just a little bit. Big smile came across my face when I saw my rundown today because I knew I got to chat with my guy, Super Bowl 60, right around the corner. And Mike Yam joins the program on a Wednesday afternoon. What's up, Mike? How are you, man?
Oh man, it's that time of the year. We got a trade deadline in the NBA. We got a game that I think a lot of people will be watching internationally and domestically on Sunday in Super Bowl 60. So yeah, a lot to unpack.
For sure. Did the Jets do something kind of smart today? I mean, I'm not used to this. It feels like they may have done something that's somewhat intelligent.
Possibly. I mean, another adult in the room, so sign me up for that. And, obviously I was around Frank Reich a little bit, just covering some college football with the ACC and obviously his time at Stanford. And there's definitely like a high level of respect that I think people in the NFL have for him, what he's been able to accomplish, what he brings to the table. And you're right. Like, I would look at this and say, hey, do you want to go, if you are Aaron Glenn, with someone who maybe hasn't done it before, a little less experience? Because, look, I don't think there's one right way to do it. I think if you trust the personnel and you trust who you have, kind of leading that group, like, it could be one of those younger guys that were sort of up and coming. But I do think for a Jets organization, much like the Giants, right, with the hiring of Harbaugh, I think going with an established, well-known guy is probably a win.
Since you referenced college football, I just realized I haven't been able to chat with you, and I don't know if you've heard, but Kyle Whittingham lives in Ann Arbor now. It has been a wild thing around here, Mike. And, of course, for our listeners' context, we know Mike from our time together when it came to the Pac-12 footprint, when Mike was with the Pac-12 network. I just wanted to know how you digested that news cycle.
All right. I was thinking about you when all this happened, and everyone in Salt Lake City, because I actually really, truly, and I'm not just saying this because I know I'm on radio in that city, like, I really loved heading there. I mean, there's still, there's like a sandwich place that I won't reference right now that is still like a go-to spot for me. I think when people at NFL Network go there for a pro day, I tell them where to go. Like, I love it. And I say that as a precursor for things that you just don't expect to happen. Things that, when they go on your timeline, you go, oh, there's some AI-generated bot that doesn't understand sports and threw that out there. Like, Kyle's not going to Michigan. Like, what are you talking about? So when that news hit, I truly didn't believe it for a second. I actually started texting to a couple people that we both know to be like, yo, is this legit? Is this actually happening? And then you sit back and you think to yourself, of all the things that program could have done, this really is a slam dunk. And I think people on the West Coast understand what Kyle was able to build there. I think it's abundantly clear. But I think the one thing that maybe you've talked about, Spence, and maybe not, that I'm actually truly happy for Kyle, because I think he's going to rock there. I think you and I both know him well enough to know that he's going to have success there. The resources are going to be amazing, and I think he's a perfect fit. But I think people will now truly understand how great of a coach this guy really is when they have success. Like, he will be talked about now because of his time at Michigan. I'm already like fast tracking to like him winning games and, maybe even competing for a national title. Like, I think that highly of him. And I do think he's now going to get his flowers when he has success there.
Yeah.
Maybe more so than he would have at Utah.
No, I keep saying this line. He's become a national name in a month in a way that he wasn't in 21 years here. It's been interesting. Like, anybody who covers college football or loves college football knows who Kyle Whittingham is and knows who Utah football is. But, like, if you're just a season ticket holder for Michigan football and you just kind of go to Michigan games, I'm sure a lot of them were like, wait, we hired who? Right? Like, and to see everybody get to know him has been really great. Now, the reaction, Mike, out here has been interesting, because Witt took 6 coaches with him. He took 5 players with him. Now, Matt Campbell took 19 to Penn State, for context. And I was talking to one of my friends who took a head high school coaching job out here, and he told me Kyle and Jason Beck and Jay Hill were out here 2 weeks ago, and they're just offering all the best Utah players, right? So there's a little collateral damage, I think, that has not landed all that well out here, but it also is just the name of the game these days, right?
Totally. And look, that's just kind of what it is. And I don't fault Kyle. When you have that much success, I got to imagine people will sort of look, and this is not an indictment, and I think this is the reality of the situation. If you would have said to me right now, hey, who's got more NIL cash? Who's going to have more resources? Who's going to be able to compensate their coaches, their assistants at a higher level? Like, let's just call a spade here. Like, it's Michigan. So I don't fault Kyle for making sure that some of his staff that he's familiar with can fast track the things that he wants to do, that he goes and does it. Utah fans, you've had the run with him. Like, he was terrific there. And I think there's like a new opportunity right now for this coaching staff, for these players to sort of cement a brand new legacy. And by the way, all things that they can do because they have the playbook here.
Right. And I do want to move over now to your, you got to know Morgan pretty well when you were with the Pac-12 Network, coming out here to cover Utah football, and, lost in all of the kind of the drama of the storyline and the shock that settled in. I can't imagine what Mark Harlan and Morgan Scalley's reaction was when the alert came up on their phone and they said, Kyle got what job? Right? But I've kind of tried to cover this through, I'll always love Whit. I'll always have a blind spot for him. He was always good to me. So I want nothing but great things for that man. But I also think Morgan's ready for this. Mike, what do you think?
Totally. Look, and I think Morgan's been patient. I remember going to those practices and seeing what he could do with that defense. And by the way, there are certain programs. Like, here's the best part from a youth's perspective. You got a guy that understands the system, like I said, who knows what it takes to win, who's seen a guy that we think is one of the best coaches in the country, and Kyle Whittingham, go and do it. Like, if Morgan was, let's just say hypothetically, the last X amount of years, 5 seasons, let's say, Morgan wasn't there. Morgan got an opportunity to go be a DC somewhere else. I have no idea. And then Kyle goes and leaves this program. Morgan would be on the short list for the replacement. You know what I'm saying? So I think people would understand pedigree and sort of that coaching tree and go, hey, like, he's our guy. Of course we would want to have him. So for as much as I think it's a huge loss, and I think even if Kyle wasn't coaching this upcoming season at Michigan, like, I'd still say it's a loss, right? Like, you don't want to lose a guy like that that's had that much success. But the best case scenario right now is Morgan, I think, in a lot of ways, especially when you're replacing Kyle with another defensive guy, right? Like, I think team identity is so important around college football right now. And look, I haven't been on a ton of campuses over the last couple of years. Like, I've been in the studio side of things with the CW. I was at ACC Media Days the last couple of years, so I'm interacting with the coaches and players, but that's before the season. I'm not at the practices, the training camps like I used to be when I was at Pac-12 Network. So I preface that by saying there is a new era of college football, and while I've been exposed to it in certain degrees, I haven't seen it boots on the ground on a lot of these campuses, understanding truly how I get it in theory, what NIL money is doing for a lot of these programs, how recruiting is changing. Like, I was on NFL Network yesterday, and we had Lincoln Riley come on the show. And we had him on for however long it was. It felt like a long time in TV land. Like, that's the best part about doing radio, Spence, and you know this. Like, not totally on the clock. You got some breaks, but you don't have to worry about doing a 5-minute interview and a producer getting your going. Gotta go. We're heavy. But, like, Lincoln was on for a while, and Lincoln was great. And what I wanted to ask him, and I didn't get an opportunity to, is, are you even having fun? Like, and maybe he is, because at SC they have the resources and they got, a shovel in the ground and they're building a new facility for those guys. And maybe it's fun. But I got to imagine, for a lot of coaches that have been doing this for a really long period of time, recruiting in college football right now, going and get these players, recruiting like literally every single day, dealing with the transfer portal, who's got what money, how much is this guy getting, what's this agent going and telling him? Like, it used to just be like kind of a pain in the butt parent, maybe, that was like just being annoying and like advocating for their kid and maybe saying some things that they shouldn't be saying, but you weren't worried necessarily about, like, what school's going to be able to pay this dude over $1 million. Like, that's the reality. And I got to imagine the old school guys can't be having as much fun as they used to, at least in my mind. And maybe I'm totally wrong in that assertion, but that's my feeling. Because it's even weird for me. Like, Spence, isn't it weird for you? Like, you just see like, oh, this player is now leaving. He's in the transfer portal and he's going to make $2 million or $3 million going and playing for this other school. It feels off. And by the way, I am all for these guys making money. It just feels like some of the guardrails just don't exist around it.
Yeah, it's taken a ton of time to get used to. And instead of doing a 4-hour show bitching about it, I've just tried to lean into what I perceive to be has been a benefit. Like, Fernando Mendoza's second start in his college career was here in Salt Lake. And that was a good Utah team. But I remember being on the sideline watching him. I'm like, this kid stinks. Like, he's got no shot, right? And the fact that he was allowed to evolve and grow and transfer, and again, it's the only sport in the world that has free agency every season. It's so beyond stupid that I agree with you. But in a way, it has provided an opportunity for a school like Utah to look at a school like Indiana and say, okay, well, that was the losingest program in college football history, and now they're the national champ. So I completely agree with you. And at some point, it's going to come to a head. But I'm trying to look at it through maybe it's improved the product in certain ways, Mike. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's leveled, I think, the playing field. But I'll say this, like, in a world of NIL or even like the pre-NIL world, don't you think Cignetti would like have success?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
In these circumstances?
Absolutely.
Like, there's that aspect of this as well that makes it sort of like a fascinating conversation. We'll never know, but like, I think clearly you and I are on the same page regarding this. Like, his fingerprints all over his program, which, by the way, that's like old school, like player development. Like, look at those rosters. They're upperclassmen. Like, he used the transfer portal. The closest thing to like pre-NIL that I can come up with, like as a comp, and it's not the same because of this team didn't have that same amount of success. But do you remember when Jonathan Smith took over at Oregon State? Here's where my Pac-12 roots, kind of shine here. He takes over that program, and he hit the portal pretty hard. And like, what did he do? He found some guys that he felt like had some really big upside. So he took some players who were, kind of on the younger side, looking for some opportunities to play, and he felt good about player development. And, that worked for him. And then with some of that roster to fill some gaps and some holes, he took some upperclassmen who had serious reps. Like, when I look at Indiana's team this past year, like, look at what they've been able to accomplish. Like, the amount of like transfers that were upperclassmen who grown men out there who understood scheme, and like, you didn't have to worry about watering down like what you wanted to do schematically because you felt like these guys had enough reps to be able to execute. Like, that's, I don't want to say like unique, but not every coach is going and doing that. And they're just trying to find like these hired guns. And I think there was like a strategic method behind the madness around Indiana.
Before we get over to the game, because, it's the Super Bowl, one more thing here, because, maybe a lot of us here in the market cannot fully grasp the magnitude of the type of pressure the head coach of Michigan football faces day in and day out. Like, Witt had a couple of 5-7 seasons here, Mike. You go 5-7 in Ann Arbor, you're on the unemployment line. Help us understand the magnitude of the type of job the head coach of Michigan football actually is.
So do you think here's how I would describe it. Like, I think Rich Rodriguez is a really good football coach.
Sure.
Right? Like, look at his time there. So you think you hit the nail on the head. I think that there's some things that are lining up for Witt that put him in a really good position to succeed. Number one, the resources, which I made reference to earlier. Like, I don't think Kyle's going to go, hey, we don't have the cash for this dude. Like, that's not going to happen there. So that's going to mitigate some of the issues that I think some programs in this country might have. Like, you can clean up your mistakes at times because of cash now, which wasn't always the case. It is a massive job, but I also think personality and fit. Like, Kyle's a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's going to coach things a little bit more old school. He's going to build his program kind of like how Big Ten teams, traditionally have built their teams, like in the trenches. Like, that's part of the reason why Kyle had success, right? Like, it was bully ball, and not every team on the West Coast, certainly not in the Pac-12, were able to compete. Like, Stanford in its heyday, like David Shaw had some really great offensive lines. But, I talked to enough coaches in the 10 years that I was covering the league that would tell you, like, even in the bad seasons, and I use air quotes around the bad years for Kyle, because it was never like brutally bad, right? Even in those bad seasons, like, those were teams you didn't want to play. And I think that team identity and what he brings to the table is going to be a good fit. But you're right, the magnitude of some of these jobs, like Michigan, who have a ton of money invested in the success of that program, you can't really mess up. You really can't have that 5-win season. And if you do, like, candidly, you're probably out.
Yeah. All right, let's move over now to the Super Bowl. And as a Jets fan, I'm thrilled that the Patriots are awesome and are going to be awesome for another 20 years. How exactly did Mike Vrabel do this? They won 4 games a year ago. Now they're in the Super Bowl.
Okay, so culture shift, a lot of creativity that I think you've been able to witness with Josh McDaniels as his offensive coordinator, putting guys in the right place to succeed. I think Vrabel deserves a ton of credit. I think he is getting all of his flowers, and he deserves it. The other thing that I would point to, if you look at the roster last year and the roster this year, this is a very different football team. And I think sometimes we forget how the money factor and strategically what you're doing in the front office can really dictate your success. They spent upwards of I think it was over $300 million in this offseason in free agency. I mean, they had a ton of cap room. They spent a massive spending spree, helped out offensive line, filled some holes on the defensive side, and obviously Stephon Diggs was a nice piece to help a Drake May, who has flourished this season. But I think you can look at some parallels right now for what could come down the pipeline. Like Tennessee is a team that obviously struggled. I think Saleh is a good coach. I know you're a Jets fan. I don't know if you would agree with that, but I think Robert Saleh in Tennessee could be a really good fit because not only do they have a quarterback in Cam Ward, but they're going to have a ton of cap space and an opportunity to go and make this roster look very different. So I think it's a combination of Vrabel being the right guy at the right time. I think they upgraded their roster significantly. But look, I mean, just because you get better players doesn't mean you're going to go and win. And I think that's why Vrabel deserves a lot of credit.
On the other side, I know it's not just about Sam Darnold, but what a cool story for a quarterback who we got to know out here in the Pac-12 days, and a quarterback who I thought after my team drafted him, okay, this is the guy that's going to give us something. And so much of that is not on Sam, but it's his 5th team. And Mike, the stat that continues to blow me away is he is the first quarterback in the history of USC football to start in a Super Bowl. It's pretty wild. But what do you make of this redemption arc story for Sam Darnold?
Yeah, it's crazy. Lincoln actually brought that up to us because we were asking him about the quarterbacks, the Heismans those players that he's coached, most recently, obviously Caleb Williams, but he kind of threw that one out there, and it's like, oh yeah, you'll do a double take. Sam's story is remarkable, man, and you know it better than most just because of your affinity for the Jets. This team, though, has won so many different ways. Like earlier this season, you saw these explosive plays from Sam and getting down the field. I mean, they look like Chip Kelly's Oregon Ducks from back in the day. They'd score in bunches so quickly. And JSN, is on the short list of the best wide receiver in the NFL. I think it's him, it's Puka, and then you can throw Chase and Jefferson into the mix as their usual spots. But it's been awesome to see that. I think as the season's unfolded in a couple of those games where Sam didn't play great, I thought the defense was as dominant as we've seen. I mean, the numbers statistically speaking, show that this might be the best unit in the NFL. From the eye test, just watching them. I mean, Spence, how many times do you watch a Seattle game and you go, I actually want to see their defense on the field? Like a lot of times we go, oh, I want to see the offensive players. No. The speed at which they're and the pursuit to the football is second to none. They don't blitz a ton, and yet it always feels like they got an extra man on defense because of the amount of pressure that defensive line can go and generate. They are a physical team. I mean, they are going to abuse the New England, offensive players. I mean, that's just the hits are just so massive. So maybe I'm kind of like, I don't know if you're going to ask me who I think who's going to win this game, but there's a part of me that feels like they can just dominate. And then there's the Rashid Shaheed factor. Him in special teams, we saw it against the Niners, him in the receiving game. Like, trade deadline comes and goes, and if you pull the trigger as an organization, you pray that you get the impact that Rashid Shaheed has given this team. I just think they're the most complete team in the NFL.
I'm going to ask you who you think is going to win, and we'll end on this, Mike. It's been interesting. And look, let me be clear. My advice to my listeners is do not gamble. All right, that's my advice. But so many people are very interested, and Seattle is a 4.5-point favorite. The line really has kind of stayed steady. So what do you think happens on Sunday?
It's funny because I don't bet either. I'm not allowed. And I actually did. I had no idea what the line was. So if you would have told me it was like, 8 or 9, I maybe would have believed that too. So I don't know what that says about my betting acumen. And how I think about Seattle in this game. Look, do I think New England, is there a path for New England to win? Abso-friggin-lutely. Are you kidding me? Like the pressure that they've generated on opposing quarterbacks. Drake hasn't looked amazing in the postseason. I think that's a function of the defenses that he's played so far. But yeah, like there's a path for him. Do I think Seattle's a better team? Yes. Do I think Seattle beat the second best team in the NFL to get here? Yeah, because I thought that was the Rams. I actually thought the Rams were going to win that game, so maybe you shouldn't take a Super Bowl prediction from me. But I do think that Seattle is the top to bottom, the more complete team, which is why I would go with them. But it is the Super Bowl. It's a one-game, sort of elimination contest right now. Drake hasn't shrunk in these bigger moments. He hasn't had great postseason games, but I just think Seattle's defense can make things really difficult for him. And if this does get to like a defensive struggle, because it's not like Sam is Matt Stafford out there, right? Like let's call it like I think Stafford's the MVP this season. I think Sam has played remarkably well, but do I put Sam Darnold or, do I put him in like the Mahomes category or the Josh Allen? No. And I think that's the only pause that I have. And it's not a negative. It's just, hey, if you told me what's the path for New England, it's making sure Sam has a rough game. But I've also seen him have rough games with multiple turnovers, and they still win because of their defense. And that's why I like Seattle.
I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be great. Mike, since it's been a while, you wrote a children's book a while back called Fried Rice and Marinara. For our new listeners, where can they go find it? And give us a quick little background.
I so appreciate it, man. Definitely a passion project for me. Kind of Fried Rice and Marinara about a little boy named Mikey who's Italian and Chinese. Also, I'm Chinese and Italian. And he didn't know what kind of food to have for his fifth birthday. And he's kind of like deciding between the two, and he felt a little torn. And then he just combined it, and it was a big hit. It's available, by the way, if you want to watch it, it's available free on YouTube. It's animated. And if the kids like it, then you want to do like a bedtime story, BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon. So seriously, always appreciate you mentioning it. And I got another one around the corner. So in a couple months, you and I will circle up, and I'll tell you about the next one that's coming out.
That a guy. Hey, thanks so much for your time. I know you're busy. We'll set you loose. We'll chat soon, Mike. Okay.
Awesome. Have a great one. Enjoy the game.
Mike Yam, NFL Network. Want to let you know that Black Crows and Whiskey Myers are taking over the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on August the 13th. You can tune in to Sean's show at noon for your chance to win a pair of tickets, and more details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. All right, before we catch a break, joining me live in studio once again is my friend Shelly from Wasatch Medical Spa. Shelly, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Spence.
Are you incredibly bored sitting here and listening to me talk about football?
No, I love football. I have 5 boys.
Oh, nice.
And most of them played football.
Do we have a preferred NFL team in the household?
Well, they didn't make it to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
My kids like the Chiefs, but they did terrible this year.
Well, I'm a Jets fan, so I have no sympathy for your children. Just teasing. All right, so Wasatch Medical Spa, just give us a quick background on you, your facility, and your staff.
Okay, I am a board-certified family nurse practitioner for the last 23 years. 12 years ago, I opened my own integrative medicine practice. It's called Wasatch Medical Spa. It's on 33rd South in Mill Creek. And we specialize in a combo of Eastern and Western medicine. We do hormone therapy, we do acupuncture, we do lots of procedures with new innovative devices.
Mm-hmm.
And one of these devices is called Apex RF. And that's what we're talking about today.
So the range of, and I'm learning this after meeting you a couple weeks ago and having you in studio today, the range of what and again, I'm sorry if I get the terms wrong because it's your area, not mine, but maybe sexual health and wellness for men and what I would call dysfunction range all the way from erectile dysfunction to full function on one spectrum, but there's so many things in the middle that this technology can actually help with. Let's go over some of those things.
Yes, so men just experiencing changes with aging are great candidates for this. Any vascular issues, diabetes can benefit. Any mild to moderate erection problems, sometimes it's just that you're just not as firm or not lasting as long as previously when you were younger, and it can help with all of that. So,
and again, for our listeners, this is new technology. So if you tried I think it was called acoustic wave therapy or whatever that was, and it didn't work, this is not that. It's a brand new thing. Let's talk about the procedure, the process. Is there pain involved, or what does it feel like?
No, it's just heat. It's radio frequency heat treatment, and it's not painful at all. It's very comfortable, just warm. there really are no side effects. Sometimes you might be a little red or a little swollen for an hour after, but it's not painful at all.
And what is the redeeming feedback you receive? Because for our listeners who missed it earlier, Shelly had her staff bring their husbands in, and your husband went through it as well for the procedure. What's the feedback you guys have received?
The funny thing is, none of them thought they had any issues.
Right.
And every single one of them noticed improvement in size, girth, sensation, or duration, or all of the above. And usually it helps with partner satisfaction as well.
All right. What's the process now? Book a consultation. What are the next steps for our listeners who are interested in hearing more?
So go to wasatchmedicalspa.com and book a consult plus first Apex RF appointment. And when you come in, we'll do a 30-minute consult with one of our very professional, smart nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's about a 20 to 25-minute procedure. And then you're back to your day. There's no downtime. And then we'll go ahead and schedule your series.
So go to wasatchmedicalspa.com. Make sure to let them know you heard us talking about it so you can get that free consultation. It's wasatchmedicalspa.com, wasatchmedicalspa.com, or there's a phone number if you prefer to call them. It's 385-333-6000. That's 385-333-6000, 385-333-6000. Shelly, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Vince.
All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the program is next on ESPN 700. All right, what's going on? Drive at 5 time, Wednesday afternoon style. We have been absolutely jam-packed today on the program. Trae Young, James Harden, Anthony Davis, Jaren Jackson Jr., Kobe White, in addition to Nick Vucevic, Chris Paul, Mike Conley Jr., Anthony Simons. We were told this was going to be a quiet trade deadline, and we were lied to. This is shaping up to be one of the busiest NBA trade deadlines in the history of the NBA. We're going to get to all of the angles. We're going to break it down from a Utah Jazz perspective. We'll keep you up to date on anything that comes down before we sign off at 6 o'clock. The NBA trade deadline will come and go tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And will the Utah Jazz continue to reshape this roster to try to be serious about competing next season? The Jazz are in Atlanta tomorrow. No Keontae. None of the new players will be playing in that game. Jock Landale thought he was flying to Atlanta to play for the Jazz. Well, he's now flying to Atlanta to play for the Hawks. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the Super Bowl, the big game, is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. This week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game. Live in the app right now. Drake May just needs one passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. It is good to be right. Now, I've been asked to share with you my Prize Picks lineup. Okay, so a couple things here before I do this. Everyone calm down. If you decide to track my picks and make my picks, you have to promise me that you will not get mad at me if we don't win, because my advice to my listeners is always do not gamble on sports. However, if you're interested and you would like to dabble, here's how I'm rolling with the Super Bowl, okay? We're going to go more on Jackson Smith and Jigba, 7.5 receptions. We're going to go more on George Holani, 1.5 receptions. We're going to go more on Hunter Henry for an anytime touchdown. If Hunter Henry scores a touchdown, we're going to cash in. We're going to go more on Kenneth Walker, 18.5 rush yards. And we're going to also take an anytime touchdown from Ramondre Stevenson and more for Stephon Diggs, 3.5 catches. That is a $50 power play to win $2,850. Do you want to know why you can win $2,850 when you only bet 50? Because this is not very realistic. However, there it is. Porter, did you have a Prize Picks lineup for the Super Bowl you'd like to share just yet? We'll get there.
I mean, I can give you a few that I've put down.
Okay, before we sign off, okay, you don't have to do it now because I caught you off guard. But final segment of the show, I just want 2 hot Prize Picks takes from you. Deal?
We're good. We got it right here.
Oh, already?
Sam Darnold, MVP.
Okay.
Rashid Shaheed. I got a deal on this one.
Okay.
Higher than 40 rush or receiving yards.
Okay.
Drake May higher than 30 pass attempts.
Huh. Okay. So those are the 3 you're rolling with.
Why not?
All right, there you go. Prize Picks. You get a free $50, so you might as well do that. Just use that promo code ESPN700. And when you play your first $5 lineup, they're going to hook you up with $50 in lineups.
I am saying you should follow mine, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead and then get mad at Porter. I mean, every time I share a lineup and it doesn't hit, people just send me mean messages. Good stuff from Mike Yam today. Is Super Bowl 60 is 4 days away now between Seattle and New England. Of course, that line continues to be Seattle favored by 4.5 points. You can hear the Super Bowl here on ESPN 700. Keep that in mind. But the NBA trade deadline has been incredibly busy today, so let's dig into a couple of things in case you missed it. Now, the Jazz did get involved today. It looked at one point that they had made 2 different deals. It turned out this is one transaction between 3 teams. So, of course, the big news yesterday is that the Utah Jazz have essentially gone all in, believing they can win at a pretty high level next year by utilizing some draft capital and some young players to acquire a 26-year-old, 2-time All-Star and former Defensive Player of the Year in Jaren Jackson Jr. to pair him with Walker Kessler, Larry Markkinen, Ace Bailey, and Keontae George which would be the tallest starting lineup in NBA history. So, as you guys probably heard, the Cleveland Cavaliers brought in James Harden, and they're going to pair James Harden next to Donovan Mitchell and see what they can do the rest of the season. They sent Darius Garland to the LA Clippers. So they needed to shed some salary as a result of some of the additions that they made, including Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder, along with James Harden. So what the Cavs did today is they traded Lonzo Ball to the Utah Jazz. The Jazz also received 2 second-round draft picks in this transaction. Jock Landale, as I referenced, thought he was flying to Atlanta to play for the Jazz. He's now flying to Atlanta to live there and play for the Atlanta Hawks. He was part of this deal as well. The Jazz are expected to waive Lonzo Ball like they did with Derrick Rose, like they did with Russell Westbrook, so Lonzo can either go find a new home or he might be out of the league altogether. Poor kid just can't stay healthy. So essentially, the Jazz received 2 second-round picks for their troubles. As a reference, the NBA trade deadline will come and go tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and there are a lot of rumors out there that the Jazz are very much not done. And I referenced this a little bit earlier in the week after the Triple J deal came down. It just felt like there were more things on the way for the Jazz. It's not a complete roster. It's a very much improved roster. And they'll be a lot better next year than I think a lot of people were expecting them to be. What does success look like year one with this new look Utah Jazz? I think we're probably going to have to wait and see what the draft brings, which brings me to your expectations the rest of the way for the Utah Jazz. I continue to use this line. Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly to Salt Lake to learn that he has a bad back. The Jazz maintain their draft pick in this year's draft. Of course, it is top 8 protected, as we've talked about quite a bit. So they will continue to manipulate their lineups in the name of draft capital, just like they have done all year long. And just like they did at the end of last season and the season before that and the season before that. The hope is, for the first time in franchise history, Lady Luck will shine on the Jazz, and they'll be able to move up potentially in the top 3 and take one of these 3 young men, whether it's A.J. DeBonsa from Brigham Young, Darren Peterson from Kansas, or Cam Boozer from Duke. You add one of those 3 pieces, specifically Darren Peterson or A.J. DeBonsa, and we are cooking with gas with this Jazz team next year. Top 5 or top 6 seeds, something like that, maybe 45 wins, and certainly a step in the right direction if a little luck can fall the Jazz way. So I'm expecting more transactions. The question is, are the Jazz right now, is the front office right now content to continue to kind of manipulate lineups the rest of this season and then see what the draft brings and then decide what they want to do? Is that the idea? And it would be a good one, because if the draft brings Darren Peterson, A.J. DeBonsa, or Cameron Boozer to Salt Lake City, it probably influences your roster construction decision-making process moving forward. Because there were a couple of players available today that were on the move that I think would have fit in perfectly with the Utah Jazz. Kobe White went from Chicago to Charlotte. Now, Kobe played his college ball at UNC. Charlotte apparently has long been wanting to have him on the team, and he is awesome. I'm a big Kobe White guy. I think he would have fit in really well for the Jazz. And Sam Presti, of course, just sat back and may have made the most underrated transaction of the entire, trade deadline process. He brings in Jared McCain from the Philadelphia 76ers in exchange for the Houston Rockets first-round pick this year, and then 3 future second-round picks. Jared McCain is 21 years old, and before his meniscus tear, he was the front runner to win Rookie of the Year. He just fits in perfectly with Oklahoma City. He is the type of player that I think this Jazz roster could utilize. But those 2 players, of course, have been moved on from. And we'll see if the Jazz get anything done coming up prior to tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Anthony Davis has been traded to the Washington Wizards. Nico Harrison traded Luka Doncic and got 29 regular season games of Anthony Davis. That has turned out to be one of the most misguided human decisions, not just trade transactions in the history of the world. I mean, it's just been ridiculous. So Dallas goes all in, clears a bunch of cap space. They're going to get some draft capital in this trade. They're going to rebuild around Cooper Flagg, who was awesome. We were debating this earlier. The best young player to build around in the ecosystem of NBA basketball is clearly Victor Wembanyama. Cooper might be right there, just right behind him. And that's why we were all hoping the Jazz could luck into one last year and grab Cooper Flagg, because that kid has just been unbelievably special. So now Dallas joins the teams, and we went over this list earlier. By my count, and we'll see what the trade deadline brings tomorrow at 11, there are currently 10 NBA teams that will be trying to lose games between now and the NBA at the end of the regular season. It makes for a really tough regular season product, as we've talked about on the show quite a bit, but really busy day. And we haven't even talked about, the other deals that have gone down. Apparently, the Miami Heat are in the mix now to grab Giannis. Giannis continues to be the big game hunting. Shout out Danny Ainge, the player out there that would change the landscape of the league quite a bit. Miami involved, Minnesota involved, the Knicks involved, maybe Golden State. And if that trade goes down, we'll have to see what it brings to Milwaukee. I would imagine it would be quite the haul. Rumor that Draymond Green is being discussed to land in Los Angeles to play for the Lakers. So a lot going on, fluid situation, and we'll continue the conversation. All right, final segment of the program today. Don't forget, you can hear Super Bowl 60 on this radio station coming up on Sunday. If you're not lucky enough to be home, if you got to work or drive around town, make sure to leave it here on ESPN 700. Is Jordan Clarkson starting for the New York Knicks?
Sometimes.
Huh. We got Knicks Nuggets going on right now, and I think our old friend JC is starting for the Knicks right now. Somebody must be hurt. Do you like watching Jalen Brunson play basketball?
That's a good question. When he's playing for my team, it's a little more enjoyable.
Uh-huh.
He is one of those players that is really crafty, really good at using his body and angles to get, number one, buckets, but also get at the free throw line. It's not always aesthetically pleasing. Like, for some reason, a lot of youngs love James Harden. His form of basketball is nauseating to me.
Yeah, I can't stand Harden.
So I understand it, and when it's on your team, you love it. When it's on the team you're playing, you hate it. But I struggle with guys who there's nothing wrong with trying to invite contact and get to the free throw line. That's a part of the game. But when you do it at the expense of like trying to just get a bucket, sometimes that's a little frustrating to watch.
Does it feel like Harden ushered in this era? What do they call it? Foul hunting now, or there's foul merchant? I think that's that's the term.
I'm not going to put it on James Harden. I'm going to put it on the league. I'm going to put it on Adam Silver and the officials and the people who like allow it. Right when you play the game and you understand the game, you can tell when guys are doing it. You can tell when guys are. Even if there is contact on your three-point shot, you can tell when that guy is the one who initiated it, whether he's good at making it look like a blurry line or not. Like James Harden's really good at the 4-point play. I think he's the all-time leader in 4-point plays. Mm-hmm. But so many of those 4-point plays are because he makes it look like someone undercuts him or someone makes contact with him when they don't. I put the onus on the league and I put the onus on the officials who call the game that way, because if they didn't, you'd have to stop doing it. You have to find a different way. But these guys who play that way, they get to the free throw line 15 times a game.
Yeah.
I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's really good at hiding it. He's a lot more fluid than James Harden, even Jalen. The lefties make it look a little weirder. I think that's always a thing. But yeah, man, I don't put it on the players, because if I'm in that position, my job is to score points. I'm going to do it whichever way, right? I think it's on the league. I think it's on the NBA refs, who have a Twitter account, which is very much less active than it used to be.
Yeah, they do. And you know who like the player that to me is like sneaky awful at manipulating this stuff is Donovan.
Yeah. Like, no, he's good at it.
His whole throw his head back every time.
Gordon Hayward was bad with it. That
to me is the most annoying move in pro basketball, when a player drives in and just throws his head back. And it's funny, like everything that the pros do, it spills over into high school ball. It spills over in I used to go watch my son play church ball. And these kids would be shooting it from half court because it was in the whole Steph Curry is changing the game deal. And now you see all these clips of 6-year-old kids taking 2 dribbles and throwing their head back because they look at it and they think that's the way to play.
Because they watched Gordon Hayward, they watched Donovan Mitchell, they watched James Harden, right? Where if it looks like you received contact, you get that whistle, and then you get 2 steps and you can get to the rim, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's ethical hoops is a term I like, because it's players who they just go out, they try to beat you, they try to move the ball and play the way. And listen, we are old guys yelling at clouds right now, but I'll continue to be so. Kevin Durant, phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I've never seen him grift for foul calls. I'll put my guy Melo in that case where he just beat you one-on-one and would do it. LeBron's a guy who he's not as he's an interesting athlete where he's just bigger than everybody, so he'll foul me and I'll still get to the rim, right? But yeah, I would like to see a lot more ethical hoops, because it's a not a lost art, but it's not as common.
All right, since you brought him up, I wasn't going to say his name. Here's my thing with LeBron. That dude is built like a Mack truck.
Right.
Do not fly into the first row when you're just touched.
Yeah.
No one's buying it. Because, I mean, you've seen him up close. Potentially the most, maybe outside of Carl, the most impressive physical physique that I may have ever seen on an NBA player. And nobody's buying it that when John Lucas III hand checks you that you're flying into the first row.
Oh, yeah. LeBron sells it. And the reason you know he sells it is because if you watch him in the playoffs, he doesn't do that. He gets fouled, and then the other player bounces off of him, and he goes and scores a layup, right? Mm-hmm. You know when he does it, it's something where you're trying to get the attention of the officials. You're trying to get the whistle, and if you don't get the whistle right then you're going to make some more. You're going to make it look a little worse, so you get that foul call. I wish we would not reward it. Now, that being said, it's a game full of guys who are flying around the court, as you mentioned, 6'8", 6'9", faster than anyone we've ever been on the court with. That in real time, when you're standing right there, it's tough to officiate. It is. It's a really hard job. But the rule book in the NBA has an edict to be friendly to offense and to be friendly to scorers. And I think it's I don't know, it discounts a lot of the game.
Yeah, I'm a guy that watches a Euro step, and I'm like, that's a travel. The Euro step wasn't a thing when I was playing basketball. It's a new, it was like Manu Ginobili kind of started it, and now there are several offensive individual plays that I'll watch every night. I'm like, that's a walk. He's traveling, but it's legal now.
And a Euro step is one thing. A gather step, and then two steps, and then you get to continue on your way to the rim. Like, we've jumped the shark on a lot of them now. Some officials officiate it differently. That's the frustrating part. You'll see it one night, and this guy will call it a travel.
Yeah.
You'll see it the next, and it's a gather step before the Euro step, and a guy is taking off from the three-point line and somehow still gets to the rim without traveling. It's, I think the NBA has a lot of attention problems. None of them exist on YouTube, which is where like their business is right now. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting dilemma.
I'm looking at this. It's actually a good night in NBA basketball. We've got Thunder Spurs. We have Cavs Clips, and they just made a trade yesterday between Harden and Garland. We've got Celtics Rockets, T-Wolves Raptors. We've got Nuggets Knicks at MSG. It's actually a pretty tasty night of NBA basketball. But also, and this is notable because, it's on our station, the Utah men need to win tonight. Arizona State in town, a very average basketball team. Utah is at home. They've won one conference game all year. I'm not going to go crazy and say a must win, but it would be really, really nice to see Utah pull off the win. What time is our pregame coverage, Porter?
Bill will get going about 6:30, 6:35. Okay. Tip off just after the top of the hour.
The Utah women currently playing against UCF on the road, and then Brigham Young is back in action tonight against Oklahoma State. And our friends up north, the Utah State Aggies, take their act on the road to one of the toughest places to play in all of college basketball. And old school Utah basketball fans remember the Keith Van Horn battles in the pit against New Mexico. Utah State and New Mexico in a virtual tie for first place in the Mountain West Conference. All right, Porter, before we get out of here, Thursday show style, what should our listeners expect?
On a Thursday edition of The Drive, Omar Ruiz will give us a preview of Super Bowl Sunday. He'll do it live from San Francisco, and then it's all NBA trade deadline. We've got Howard Beck. We've got Richard Smitty Smith, and Smitty will be in studio to cover it all as it unfolds and as we cross over the actual trade deadline.
There you go. So join us for a jam-packed Thursday edition of the radio show, and we'll say goodnight. A very special thank you to Andy Larson, Tim McMahon, Tony Jones, and Mike Yam for any of the for any of the sound that you as a listener may have missed. I have good news. It's 2026 now, so everything is online and digital for your consumption. So if you were busy today and you want to get all the up-to-date information about the NBA trade deadline or Super Bowl 60, ESPN 700 Sports is where you go. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page, please, and become a follower, a subscriber. If you have time, give us a rating, say nice things, and give us all the stars. And it actually does help the show out a lot. We'd appreciate it. For Porter and Duke, our station mascot, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Wednesday evening. Enjoy some running Ute hoops, and we'll talk to you on a Thursday edition of the program right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.